Due to the fact that there was an attempt to poison the royal family, the family of the Marquis Lors was sentenced to death. In front of the boy and girl, their own parents were killed. Our heroine did not understand why everything happened this way, how they could be accused of poisoning the imperial dynasty. They would never dare to do such a thing. The man who set them up was Crown Prince Dylan von Vasilios. He approached them and said that they should only hold their grudge against their own powerlessness. After which he ordered Liam, who was the girl's kind, timid twin brother, to be taken away. Our heroine screamed for them to stop, because the guy had done nothing at all and was not capable of even hurting a fly. But the Crown Prince did not listen to her at all and gave a criminal order. The young man then approached Lenali and stated that now she was the only one left. The girl looked at him and thought that how he even dared to do this to her family. He has no forgiveness. As the Lors were led to the guillotine, she thought to herself that she wasn't a good enough big sister. Liam was constantly being bullied, and she didn't even know it. The boy should not have been sent to Fortis Academy. It's just a pity that she realized this too late. If Lenali had only known, she would not have allowed this cruel prince to have his way. Before her death, our heroine turned to God and said that if she could return to that time, she would definitely fix everything. Suddenly, the girl woke up abruptly and screamed loudly from the nightmare she saw. Liam immediately ran up to her and exclaimed that it was so good that she had finally come to her senses. Lors immediately began to touch him and whisper in shock that he was alive, but the young man did not understand what was happening to her. Lenali wondered what it all meant. They were supposed to be killed, but they turned out to be alive. The guy shouted that she had been lying around with fever all night, and he already thought that he would be left without his beloved sister. During training, she lost her balance and fell, and very unsuccessfully because of this, everyone was very fussed. The young man added that their parents simply could not find a place for themselves. Our heroine scratched her head and asked for forgiveness, then said that next time she would be more careful. Liam said that if she never woke up, she would miss the initiation ceremony, which will take place the day after tomorrow, although, to be honest, he doesn't really want to go there. But the girl said that this was impossible, that it was necessary to attend the ceremony, and then asked where he was applying. The young man was indignant that she really had memory lapses, to the Fortis Academy, of course. Then he exclaimed that apparently these were the consequences of a blow to his head, so the young man headed towards the door in order to call a doctor. Lenali asked him to calm down and explained that she just had a nightmare. Because of it, she was a little confused, that's all. I thought to myself what all this means. They should be 19 years old now. If you look closely, Liam looks a little younger, and apparently he is currently 16 years old, just before his admission. It seems she went back 3 years ago. The young man is a kind and smart younger brother. Her pride. He wields magic better than a sword. However, in their family tree, from generation to generation, men became knights. He did not show good abilities in this, so he was ridiculed by those around him as a mediocre and small fish. In the end, the Crown Prince also had his eye on him. If my brother does enter the academy, the tragedy will repeat itself, and this cannot be allowed. The guy said that if he could wield a sword like her, then everything would be different, despite the fact that they are twins. Why are there so many differences between them? If the girl had been born a boy, then everything would have been completely different. Suddenly something dawned on her, and she screamed that how could she not have thought of this herself? Then she pulled her younger brother towards her and began to whisper something in her ear. After listening to her carefully, Liam objected that it was too risky. If they were discovered, there would be serious consequences. But Lenali replied that everything would be fine, no one would know anything, and that he should just trust her. After some time, our heroine sharply opened the doors to her father's office and announced that she had a conversation with him. But as soon as the man saw her, he did not listen, but simply hugged her tightly. After which, he began to lament whether everything was all right with her and whether the fever had gone away. But the girl said that he would simply strangle her. When Dad let her go, Lenali noted that she apparently made him very worried, but now everything is fine and there is no need to worry. After which she stated that she had a serious conversation with him and headed towards the swords. Taking one of them, she put it to her hair and said that she had been thinking for a long time about what if it weren't for Liam, but she had entered the academy. After which she abruptly cut off her long, beautiful hair and declared that she would enter Fortis herself instead of her brother. Sometime later, the girl was already looking at the country's main training center for knights and magicians. There are only 50 places for boys in the Faculty of Chivalry, And in the Faculty of Magic there are 50 places for both boys and girls. The threshold for the academic year is high. Only 150 people overcome it. Lena Lee firmly decided that she would do everything possible and would definitely protect the happiness of their family, which was encroached upon by the Crown Prince. When she first said that she was going to the academy, her brother and father were completely horrified. The man shouted what kind of absurdity this is. Next year she is planning a wedding with the Duke of Vergman. And despite this, the daughter dared to cut off her beautiful long hair. It was so wonderful. Why do that? The daughter asked her father to listen to her carefully. Chivalry was absolutely not for Liam. His talent is magic, and he must have noticed it too. The Pope objected that in the Lors family tree, all the men were knights, if not her brother, then who would then become the head of the family. The girl replied that she would become an heiress, change into a man's suit, and become Liam Lores, after which she would receive the necessary knowledge and skills at the knightly faculty. That is why our heroine cut off her hair in order to look as much like a guy as possible. The father could not stand it and shouted what she was talking about. Didn't her daughter know that knighthood was only for men, and she, a girl, would not be allowed even close to such a place? Lena Lee exclaimed that she would not be found out, she would be very careful. Dad replied that she could say such things as much as she wanted, but it was useless. Besides, housekeeping training should be on her. Our heroine shouted that let Liam do this while she attended the Faculty of Chivalry. Her brother would go to these classes instead of her. The young man, of course, was indignant, but did not argue much. The man became completely furious and shouted that none of this mattered, since he was categorically against it. If they switch places and each live in their own way, then sooner or later this will be revealed, and the Lors clan will come to an end. As the current head of the family, he can never allow this to happen. His daughter is a girl. She does not need to hold a sword in her hands, because her happiness should lie in family life. Our heroine said that now she will clarify the situation a little. Women's happiness is not limited to getting married. Plus, Duke Vergman is unlikely to accept her with such short hair. Then she shouted that she must take care to glorify their family, let her father allow her to attend the academy. A terrible picture flashed before her eyes, where her family was beheaded, and Lena Lee thought that she could not allow this tragedy to happen again. Unexpectedly, the man replied that okay, but only on one condition: she only has 1 year. If, during this time, the daughter cannot prove that she is suitable for the role of heiress of their family, then she will be immediately returned home and married to the Duke. The girl thought to herself that everything had finally worked out, and perhaps she was too aggressive, but at least she received the desired permission. The funny thing was that her clothes suited her little brother perfectly. When they saw her, the girls already began to discuss how handsome this guy was, wondering what family he was from. Our heroine noted to herself that at least the girls have no idea about anything. It was a good thing since she couldn't stand out. The last time she spoke to her brother, he said that he ran into the Crown Prince at the initiation ceremony. She should be very careful. She should not get involved in a conflict with him in order to avoid death in the future. Suddenly a woman's squeal was heard. The girls were happy that they would finally see these beautiful young men and simply could not believe their happiness. Mr. Arnold was shining brighter than the sun today and was very smiling. Some girls wanted to catch Mr. Eldika's cold gaze on themselves. Mr. Kyle was in a depressed mood but still looked great. And His Highness Crown Prince Dylan looked very noble. The rulers of the academy were called Fazius, precisely those who support their country. The lineage of magicians of the Duchy of Krisia, the lineage of the knights of the Duchy of Osman, the lineage of the Duchy of Bahart responsible for governing the country, they all serve the emperor from generation to generation. They are the 3 main dynasties that strongly support this country. The heirs of each of these families entered the academy last year, and neither students nor teachers have power over them. In fact, it is these 4 who control it, which is why they were called Phagias. Only now, the same young man about whom the girls dreamed so much falsely. Meanwhile, the guy was thinking that the joyful exclamations had somehow become less. Then I heard some girls admiring some handsome young man and discussing that apparently he was new, since they had not. The prince immediately turned to him and asked if he was from the knightly faculty. Our heroine was very confused and could not even gather her. The young man noted that he was somehow too gentle. Is it really? And as a bonus, it comes with a woman's face. It seems that the Faculty of Chivalry no longer values it at all. The guys shouted that they should leave him and it would be better to go watch the show. But the crown prince was not going to leave so easily, so he took her by the chin and asked how he even held the sword. The girl thought to herself that it could be worse because she wanted to avoid their meetings if possible. But the root of all evil, His Highness noted that the boy looked rather impudent and asked what his name was. Hearing the surname Lors, the guy muttered that he heard it, and it is unknown because in their family, there is a beast-like girl who loves to swing a sword with men, and Virgman is going to become her fiancé. Why did he even decide to choose her? Lena Lee thought to herself that she just incredibly... Dylan said that he doesn't like his look, but the guy is quite funny, after which he sharply put his sword to her face. Our heroine thought to herself that how did it even come to this? He is a real type. The young man asked that he was really scared, or if his sword was just a decoration. The girl thought to herself that if one of the most powerful clans really disappeared from the face of the earth, she didn't care if he insulted her. Therefore, she abruptly took out her sword, put it in front of his face, and replied that she accepted his challenge. And after her victory, the young man will reconsider his words spoken earlier. Dylan replied that they agreed. In fact, the boy was too self-confident. When the battle began, Eldika noted that it was better to stay away from them. Meanwhile, the crown prince was thinking that although he has a woman's face, he has a lot of strength. He cannot be allowed to win. Lena Lee mentally addressed him and said that she was not inferior to any. Our heroine often defeated the strongest male opponents. They always had very mixed feelings as they had never lost. One of them noted that she defeated high-ranking knights, and this means that Lore is truly out. Dylan thought to himself that this was to be expected from a member of such a famous... The girl thought to herself that she had to become stronger for the sake of her family. Literally a moment later, our heroine managed to... His friends who watched the entire battle could not believe that anyone could Lena Lee noted that victory is hers, so he must fulfill his promise. Let him rethink his statements that their Laura's family has come to an... The young man replied that he kept his word, but he shouldn't turn up his nose ahead of time, since he was lucky in only one fight. Then he shouted to his guys that it was time for them to move on. Our heroine was very angry at the words of the crown prince that she was just lucky. On the way, she thought that it was only the first day of school, and problems had already appeared. Lena Lee had sworn not to get involved, but it still came to a duel, and now his attention is... As soon as she entered her class, those present immediately began to whisper, and the girl noted that, apparently, the gossip did not take long. Our heroine, of course, assumed such an outcome, but no one wants to bring trouble upon themselves. But Liam was also lonely and could not make friends. But for her, everything should be the other way around. The girl is not going to give up. Every possible effort must be made so that she has at least one friend. Suddenly, a guy approached her and exclaimed that he saw that duel. It's amazing how the boy dealt with the crown prince, after which he introduced himself and said that his name was... Our heroine thought to herself that she really already had a candidate for friends. The young man realized that he must be from a family of aristocrats and began to apologize for addressing him so disrespectfully. The girl replied that there was no need to worry so much. Everyone should be equal in class. Agni said that everyone around him was gossiping that it was better not to mess with him, but he thought that why not? Lena Lee didn't really understand what it all meant and wondered what everyone was talking about. From that moment on, she and her new acquaintance spent quite a lot of time together. The guy turned out to be very friendly and optimistic. Liam would and a few days after that exciting first day of school, our heroine walked down the corridor. She thought that she had stayed in the library longer than expected. Agni must have been waiting for her. But suddenly Lenali noticed some kind of crowd near the fountain. Those present were lamenting that it was simply terrible, and he had coming closer, our heroine tried to see what was going on there. Seeing that they were mocking her friend, the girl immediately ran to him, shouting what they were doing. But the crown prince sharply put his sword in front of her and did not allow her to go further. The girl screamed what happened and why the young man was in such a state. Dylan replied that it was because this guy ignored his orders and dared to associate with such trash as him. Lenali immediately remembered Agni's word. The crown prince replied that people who don't do what they are told should be punished. Our heroine did not pay attention to his words, but ran up to her friend and tried to help him, saying that she would now take him to the first aid station. The young man hissed that how dare he ignore him. Seeing the swords in their hands above her head, the girl thought that now they— But as soon as one of the young men struck, a protective sphere appeared around our heroine. The girl did not understand where this magic circle came from and who made it. It turned out to be Kyle, who said that the crown prince was going too far. The crown prince became very angry and shouted that he should not cross his path. Our heroine did not understand why this man suddenly decided to save her. It was somehow strange. Arnold immediately flew up to them to calm the situation and exclaimed for the two to stop quarreling. After which the young man asked if there would be any problems on Eric. Then the crown prince looked at the girl and said that he really did wrong. Would he forgive her? While Lenali was completely confused, the young man added that as an apology, he would like to invite her to Aris. Everyone present was also very surprised and wondered whether this guy would go to the tea party, and Dylan continued to say that today he really crossed the line and he really regrets it. The girl looked at him and did not understand what was going on. The guy added that if she agrees to join the tea party, then he will be guaranteed a bright future, and he is sure that the Marquis Lore will be delighted. Lenali thought to herself that she had no right to refuse him because of his status, but she had no idea what he was up to. Therefore, she said out loud that she would gladly accept His Highness's invitation. The guy replied that, great, and tomorrow he'll be waiting at 16 o'clock in the pavilion in the Eastern Garden. Aris comes from the word aristocracy. This is the central body of the academy. Its members are only a select few. Its members are considered the faces of the academy. This reception takes place regularly. All aristocrats want to get, having visited it at least once. The girl's popularity increases significantly. Her advantage is recognized by the surrounding ladies, and she becomes the man is guaranteed a carefree future. And after graduating from the academy, he has every chance to take the elite path of bureaucracy or knighthood. While taking a shower, the girl thought that she hoped that everything was okay with Agni. After what happened, she took him. Our heroine hopes that the shower is safe because it is in a separate and uncrowded building. Plus, she locked the door. She felt very sorry for her new friend, who had received so many injuries because of her. A little more, and he could have died. Also, will her friend want to communicate with her again when he comes to his senses? She didn't understand what Dylan was up to. When the girl, being naked, sharply opened the curtain, she saw a young man in front of her. This young man was Mr. Kyle, who was a member of Facius and was a friend of the Crown Prince. Our heroine abruptly covered herself and began to think to herself that he really noticed. But how did the guy get here after all? She locked the shower with a key. The young man looked at her carefully and stated that it meant that she really was a girl. Lenali couldn't believe that she followed all the precautions, but she was still exposed and also a member of. After some time, the young man thought that it turned out that instead of his younger brother, our heroine on her knees began to beg him not to tell anyone about this. The young man asked what the person whose place the girl had taken was doing. She replied that she was learning housekeeping instead. Suddenly, the guy laughed loudly and said that this was something new. While the guy burst into laughter, Lenali thought that Kyle Crecia was somehow strange. Our heroine looked at the young man with a pleading look and asked if he could keep her secret. But she thought to herself she couldn't let everyone know about her true identity, so she exclaimed that she would do whatever. When the young man replied that it was good, the girl could not believe that everything turned out to be. The young man added that he would keep her secret, but only on one condition. He will share this information with everyone if he suddenly gets bored, so she will have to entertain him. Lenali thought to herself that this terrible person had decided to take advantage of her weakness. After some time, our heroine walked along the corridor and suddenly a crowd of guys appeared in front of her and asked if he had received an invitation. The girl thought to herself that in an instant it was clear that this was because of Aris, but she did not think that it would affect her life so much. Then she asked if her friend Agni had returned from the first aid station. The guys replied that no, he had serious injuries and he should rest all day. Lenali thought that if the tea party passed without incident, then she would definitely visit him and properly ask for forgiveness. The next day, our heroine arrived at the appointed time at the place where she was called. The Crown Prince noted that after all he decided to come here and was not even afraid. Dylan gives credit for his. The girl replied that this was an invitation from His Highness. Everyone present looked at her with great interest, and she noted that these were the current members of Aris, and in order to avoid surprises, it is better to start preparing for the worst outcome of events. The Crown Prince said welcome to the tea party and let everyone else greet him with all. When the girl was about to sit down at the table, after which the young man turned to the side where the waitress stood. Lenali asked what this all meant. Wasn't he invited to the tea party? The guy replied that of course he was invited, but only as a waiter. Our heroine finally understood what he was planning. The eldest son of. It is logical that in this place no one will take her side, so there is no point in arguing with them, because that is all he is waiting for. Therefore, she said that, as he understood, Kyle noted to himself that, as he thought, the girl essentially, serving the table is the work of a maid, although Lenali was only trained in housekeeping. But then our heroine turned to the waitress and asked what she should do. Then she added that there is no need to worry so much. Let him say whatever he wants. A little embarrassed, the girl asked that, in that case, if she could serve the gentleman from Phaeus. Lenali exclaimed that, of course, and noticed that one cup was different. The maid explained that this was His Highness's personal cup. Our heroine did not waste time and took boiling water to pour it into the teapot. Those present noted that he was really coping. One of them said that the guy was the son of a marquis. While pouring tea, Lores thought to herself that no matter what they say, she loves drinking tea. So she knows all the young man watched all this and was clearly very annoyed by it. Having brought him a cup, Lenali thought to herself that he really had it. In the past, at this time, there had already been shouts that this guy had poisoned His Highness. The young man shouted that this was not. Then our heroine began to worry that this story could repeat itself this time. It was because of this situation that her younger brother was expelled from the academy. How could she forget? It could probably happen again. Just don't tell her that the fact that she went back in time. Meanwhile, the young man raised the cup to his mouth and said that the Aris tea party could be. Without wasting any time, our heroine quickly began to run towards him. After which the girl snatched the cup from his hands and began to drink from it herself. Lenali immediately began coughing up blood, and noted to herself that there was poison in the tea after all. When Lorez began to fall, the young man caught her so that she would not hit herself. Our heroine looked at him and thought that the prince was cold-blooded, but even if there was poison in the cup, everyone present was in complete shock and did not understand. The crown prince immediately had a picture before his eyes of his mother coughing up blood in the same way after drinking tea. Kyle immediately ran up to them and began doing some magical manipulations. It dawned on Eldika that since this guy knows how to heal, this is a very lucky turn of fate. The young man replied that there was nothing special about it, and after which he picked up our heroine in his arms and said that he would take her to the first aid station. Arnold noted that this guy saved someone, and, apparently, it will rain tomorrow, which, according to a Japanese proverb, the young man approached Dylan and asked if he was okay. The crown prince. Then the young man shouted for everyone to remain in their places. They would check everyone who could have added. Meanwhile, Kyle reasoned with Lena Lee, who was unconscious, that if he had not been there, perhaps she would have died and it would have been. Apparently, she realized that the tea was poisoned and decided to drink it. The girl is really very reckless. Then he began to think that it was definitely not her who poured the poison, but that she was practically framed. The main target of the criminal was the crown prince, and he planned his secret murder. At the same time, they also have their eyes on his favorite. He will make this person regret his action until his death. After some time, when our heroine came to her senses, she did not. Suddenly, the voice of a young man was heard nearby, who stated that she had. The girl immediately jumped up and exclaimed in surprise what he was doing near her bed. The young man replied that there was no need for all these standard phrases. Let him better explain what happened. Lena Lee at first didn't understand that she had to explain, but then she remembered that she drank that poisoned tea. Apparently, he suspects her. Our heroine did not understand what to do in this situation, because now she could be executed again. The young man looked at her carefully and seriously asked if he had added this poison. She immediately screamed that she was not, and thought to herself that she needed to deny any of his accusations. The crown prince asked that, then he realized that the tea was poisoned, because that is why the guy drank it. Lena Lee didn't understand what to do, because she couldn't say that. Nothing better came to her mind than to scream that it was intuition that had worked. His cup was different from all the others, and he had a bad feeling about it. She thought to herself, who added the poison after all? No one would confess. But at that moment, the young man hissed that it was only because of this that there was no need to joke like that. Our heroine noted with fear that the young man was very angry. His Highness flew into a rage and shouted that this was really the only reason why he had done such, after which he calmed down a little and added that the guy clearly held a grudge against him. But why did he suddenly decide to save him? Dylan remembered his mother and thought that he no longer wanted to see someone die from poison again. Our heroine did not understand why he had such a pained expression. Then she replied that because he is a knight, and even if the crown prince hates him, then first of all the guy is a student of the knighthood faculty. He entered the academy in order to protect his family, even if at the same time he himself would be exposed to danger. In the future, due to his duty, he will need to protect His Highness, so it is better to start doing this right now. Dylan was very surprised and thought to himself that despite the terrible. Suddenly, the guy shouted that he should never do this again. He shouldn't take his own. If he sees the young man drinking poison in front of him again, he will finish him off before the substance. The girl cautiously replied that okay, but she wondered to herself what he actually meant. Had the future really changed, and she had, after all, escaped execution? His Highness added that, however, he could not help. Lanely completely stopped understanding what was going on. Had the Crown Prince really? The young man hissed that even if he thanked him, it was not necessary. Our heroine noticed that the Crown Prince blushed and suddenly left. This relieved all the tension and made her very happy. The young man at first shouted what he was laughing at, but then noted that when this guy smiles, he is surprisingly. Then he suddenly realized that he really just thought the guy was cute. The next day, all the girls admired that he was the savior of His Highness Delana, and that Agni exclaimed that Liam is so cool and has become very popular, but our heroine asked what was going on. The friend explained that he felt Lanely didn't understand what other hero she was talking about when everything had changed so dramatically. She wanted to behave as Agni did not understand her confusion and said that this is great. Now he is recognized by Phaesius. Doesn't the guy deserve this status? When he was beaten, he thought he was going to die like that. But his brave friend saved the young man, by the way. The girl thought to herself that despite the fact that because of her he was in serious condition, they still remained good friends, and this was very cool. They then shook hands and decided that they should give their all to this battle, but first they needed to practice. Select members of 4 academies, including Fortis, risked the pride and honor of their school at an annual meeting where participants It would not be an exaggeration to say that those who study in these, and all because the winner gets a place in the Imperial Guard. Now that the girl has been selected, she must live up to the name of the Lors family and finally get her father to recognize her as his successor. Meanwhile, a young man was spying on them and noted that this young man was clearly starstruck. Suddenly they met Eldika and Kyle, who asked how our heroine was feeling. She replied that everything was fine and apologized for the inconvenience. The young man replied that at present the identity of the criminal who added the poison was still being investigated, but they would definitely find out who did it. The girl replied that she understood everything and thanked them for it. I thought to myself that the criminal who framed her younger brother was never revealed, what kind of person he was. Eldic said that the poison did not have time to kill him, so he is glad that when Lanely realized that Chrysia had given her the antidote, she immediately started babbling that she didn't know how to thank him. The young man replied that there was no need to worry, everything was fine, but he whispered in his ear, after which the young man waved his hand and said that they would see each other at a training session for the elite. Our heroine wondered what Kyle was thinking about. He knows her identity, and the girl shouldn't make a mistake in front of him. Agni exclaimed that Liam is really cool because he can communicate with Phaesius so casually, after which the friend added that he personally was still afraid of them. Lanely replied that she was actually still nervous around them. Then she exclaimed that she seemed to have forgotten something, so she would come back and get it. And the young man shouted that it's okay, just don't be late for the training of the chosen ones. After some time, looking at the door to the locker room, the girl thought that, in theory, there should be no one there anymore. Then she mentally asked Agni for forgiveness for lying about the. At such moments, our heroine felt all the inconveniences of disguising herself as a man. While Lanely was thinking that she would quickly change clothes and catch up with her friend, someone suddenly grabbed her from behind and covered her mouth with his hand so that she would not scream. One of the 3 unfamiliar guys noted that it turned out to be easier than he thought, and everything went without. The girl did not understand what kind of people they were, and it seems the young man said that he had nothing against him. This was just an order from the customer, so he would have to hurt him a little. In the meantime, everyone was informed that the training session would begin very soon. The Crown Prince was thinking about why this young man had not come yet. But then His Highness quickly realized that this had absolutely nothing to do with him. Alarmed, Agnes ran up, began to look around, and stated that his friend was not here either. Kyle asked who he was looking for. Was it Liam? He was with him after all. The young man was very afraid of Phaesius, but he shouted that he could not find his friend anywhere. The guys didn't understand what he meant. Where could Loris have gone? The guy said that on the way here, Liam realized that he forgot something. So he went, and not far from the locker room, the guy only found his sword lying on the ground. Dylan thought this was very strange. Since what student of Arnold asked thoughtfully if this didn't seem too strange to them. The young man asked if he had noticed anything suspicious in the area. Agnes replied that perhaps a crowd. The young man stated that this could be a very bad sign. Eldick said that, in this case, it can be assumed that something definitely. The Crown Prince started to worry, but then he came to his senses. But nevertheless, His Highness still ran in search of the young man. Meanwhile, strangers were bullying our heroine, and she did not understand why. One of them said that he had such an expression on his face, as if the guy did not understand anything. The girl thought to herself that absurd hostility was a very stupid reason for such a thing. The guy continued that that's why they needed to break at least one of his arms. The second young man noted that the third one said that he was absolutely right, and it was a pity that their captive was a young man. How can such a fragile boy handle a sword so skillfully? Then one of them grabbed a knife and noted that it was time to have fun. Our heroine was not going to give up and even tied up. She then reached for the knife in his hand and cut the tape covering her, after which she screamed with all her strength for someone to come to her aid. The young man immediately grabbed her by the scruff of the neck and shouted that he should immediately close his mouth. Then he pushed her to the floor and noted that he had more fortitude than he expected, after which he grabbed her by the leg and said, so that the guy wouldn't try to run away, he could start. Suddenly His Highness Dylan appeared in the room and angrily asked. The guys immediately began to panic that their affairs were bad, because this was the Crown Prince. Then they rushed at him with their fists, shouting so that he would not block their But the young man decided to engage them in battle, so he began to drive them away from him with the help of his sword. Then the young man noticed that one of them had a knife in his hands, which posed a great danger. Therefore, he did not waste time and immediately knocked him out of his hands with the help of his sword. Our heroine watched it all in surprise and did not understand what the Crown Prince was doing here. Had he really? Then she noticed that her shirt was torn and there was a cut on her chest. Lena Lee began to panic that she couldn't curl up, but he would still get closer, and immediately Loris tried to stand up, but she didn't succeed because it was very painful. But unexpectedly, the young man threw his jacket over her and said that he would let her put it on and return it later. Our heroine thought to herself that why does he treat her so kindly? The rest of the Phages appeared in the room and asked what was going on. When the young man freed her, our heroine asked how he knew that she was there. Kyle replied that these guys told them, after which a couple of wolves ran into the room and he told her to meet his friends. Then they jumped onto the young man's neck and he began. A moment later, they turned into the scarf that the guy had previously worn. Kicking one of the intruders, the young man asked who the customer was. The stranger replied that he could even kill him, but the mercenary would still not say anything. Kyle immediately transformed into a snarling wolf and asked if he really wanted to die. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince asked Lena Lee if her legs hurt. The girl replied that yes. His Highness immediately grabbed her arm and said that he would help her walk. Having lifted it, the guy noted that he was quite light and should eat more. Somehow it happened that the young man accidentally touched her breast. Lena Lee immediately began to panic that he would now guess everything. It was not in vain that she was worried, because His Highness immediately had. Our heroine didn't understand what to do now. Did he really guess that she was a girl? As luck would have it, she had white noise in her head, and Loris couldn't figure out. But the young man grabbed her by the shoulders and shouted that her bruise was really that bad. As he was supporting him, he accidentally touched his chest and something swelled there. Smiling, our heroine replied that yes, but she thought to herself that apparently the thought had not even occurred to him that she could be a girl. Then she muttered that he had actually been kicked in the chest. The Crown Prince said to show him immediately to make sure that the bones were not broken. Lena Lee began to think to herself that this was definitely the end, since she was at a Unexpectedly, Kyle came to the rescue and said that there was no need to worry so much. The guy would heal him. Our heroine had tears in her eyes because Chrysia saved her once again. He is a really good person. The young man leaned towards her and quietly whispered that it was very good that Dylan was thick-headed. Lena Lee immediately thought to herself that she was taking back her words. A moment later, our heroine was illuminated by a bright magical glow, after which the young man said that that's it. Now his pain. Loris thought to herself that nothing really hurt anymore. The guy saved her for the second time. Meanwhile, Dylan was thinking that, let's say, the guy was really hit hard on the chest and there was a bruise there. But why then was it so soft, like a girl's breasts? Then he grabbed his head and said to himself that why fantasize about a wounded person? Besides, Loris is a guy. Our heroine looked at Kyle and thanked him for healing her wounds. The young man replied that it was nothing special. It was not difficult for him. Dylan was angry that despite the fact that he saved him, Liam didn't even say a word of gratitude to him. And now, on top of everything, What kind of strange, vague feelings did His Highness have? Immediately after this, the criminals who captured our heroine were detained, including the main culprit who ordered it all, the son of Count Damble. He and 3 other students were expelled from the academy, and the case was closed. A few days later, a training session took place, which could not be carried out last time. Lenali competed with her friend, who was hard to resist. The young man fell exhausted to the floor and noted that Liam was still incredibly strong. The girl thanked him and replied that he was The guy added that he needed to train harder since he could no longer continue to lose. From somewhere off to the side came Kyle's voice, who said that he was doing a great job as always. Our heroine did not expect to see him and greeted Mr. Krisha in confusion. The young man told her to simply call him by his name, since all these honors were not needed, and then he abruptly moved the wolf towards her and noted that these guys seemed to like him too. The girl thought that she still couldn't get over the fact that the guy came close to her and said that since Lenali continued to not call him by name, then he would have to reveal the fact that she was a girl. Our heroine didn't understand why he liked to tease her so much all the time. Being discovered would be much worse than calling him by name, so I replied that I understood, Kyle. The young man immediately smiled and said that it sounded good coming from her. Suddenly, Dylan's voice was heard, who told her to fight with him with swords. Our heroine wondered why she, the girl, no longer wants to put herself at risk. Why is there such increased attention from the Crown Prince to her? Arnold, who had been watching all of this from the sidelines, wondered why he had picked on Lors in the first place. Eldick adjusted his glasses and said that this had nothing to do with him. The young man continued to think that maybe it was because Liam had such a pretty face. The young man looked at him with disbelief and asked if he really liked guys. Arnold was confused at first, but then replied that this was absolutely not true. Meanwhile, our heroine fought with Dylan and thought that he had become even stronger than before, and besides, he was in better physical shape. Perhaps this is the true strength of the Crown Prince. She lacks power. She could only take it with speed, but she can't choose the right moment. Suddenly, the young man managed to knock the sword out of her hands, and she fell to the ground, breathing heavily. His Highness looked at her and wondered why this guy was so handsome. Our heroine smiled and said that Dylan is really very strong. The Crown Prince continued to have thoughts that he was just incredibly cute. Then he abruptly covered his mouth with his hand and told himself to calm down already, because he was a guy. The girl looked at the young man, who was behaving very strangely, and did not understand what was happening. Lenali thought to herself that a simple competition would not compare to what awaited her in the tournament with students from other academies, so she needed to become stronger. When she tried to stand up, she felt herself hit hard as she fell straight onto her butt. The Crown Prince asked if everything was okay with him. Maybe he should give him a hand. But suddenly, a young man appeared who did it first, after which he noted that it was very unusual to see His Highness behave this way. The guy explained that Liam simply hurt himself during the battle with him, and naturally, he was responsible for this. The young man objected that he could heal his bruise, so he could deal with it himself. The Crown Prince did not like this very much, and it was like a black cat ran between them. Dylan shouted that he should get up already. Isn't it a great honor that he especially extends his helping hand to him? While Kyle said that he could heal his bruises. Our heroine looked at them and did not understand what was wrong with these two. His Highness asked menacingly whether he would, of course, accept his helping hand. Kyle countered that no, Liam would accept his help with the healing. The girl was in shock and did not understand who she should choose, how to act correctly in this situation, and whether she could even make the right decision. Therefore, our heroine shouted that she would rise herself in order not to choose anyone. Dylan immediately snorted and said that since he could stand up himself, then there was no problem. After which he shouted to Crisia that the training was over and it was time for them to go. The young man immediately waved to Lenali and said that they would see each other again. When they left, our heroine breathed a sigh of relief that it was all over. In the student dormitory of the Fortis Academy, the girl collapsed on the bed and noted that the school day was finally over. She was very tired today, and clearly this fatigue was moral. But still, why did the Crown Prince save her and then talk to her? As today he continues to show signs of attention to her. Is it possible that the poison incident is slowly changing the future? But then she seemed to come to her senses and began to get angry that this prince was the same guy who executed her family. She couldn't let her guard down. Lenali then noticed that there was an envelope on her desk. The girl completely forgot that she received the letter. If the sender is Lenali Loras, then it means it came from Liam. It was very interesting to read how her little brother was doing. It said that it was very urgent. His Highness the Prince personally sent them an invitation to the ball, so please let her return as soon as possible. Our heroine was completely horrified. What other ball? When was the last time she was at such an event? She will have to go there like a girl. Lenily can't just go to the prince's ball, because Dylan can guess that they have switched places with Liam. What should she do now? Still, this day has come. She has thought about refusing many times, but this is an invitation from the royal family and from the prince himself, so she cannot ignore it without any good reason. And our heroine really doesn't want everyone to focus on this. Be that as it may, only the fact of visiting is important. You can just come, chat a little, and leave. After some time, the girl reached the house and informed everyone present about it. Numerous maids immediately began to bow and welcome the mistress back. Then they abruptly picked her up and began to jabber that they had very little time, so they urgently needed to take a bath. They would wash her until she was shining. Lenily shouted that she had just returned. Let them at least let her catch her breath a little. The girl objected that then she needed to return a few days earlier. The ball would take place tonight, and it was already close to noon. Usually they had time from early morning, so they could not rush. While the maid was washing our heroine's hair, she said that she still couldn't come to her senses after the young lady's beautiful hair had become so short. Loris replied that she was pretending to be Liam to attend the academy, and with such a length it was much more convenient. How did she even miss May washing her hair? The woman was indignant that she was stubborn, but even like that, she really liked her. Our heroine thought that, really, she couldn't go to the ball with such a hairstyle, so what should she do? After some time, the girl was completely ready. The maids painted her and dressed her in a beautiful dress. They admired how Lena Lay looked absolutely beautiful and finally looked like herself. Loris looked at herself in the mirror and noted that this image was very different from her holding a sword in her hand. Suddenly, a brother's voice came from behind the door, saying that if the sister had already finished, then he wanted to come in. Entering the room, the guy exclaimed that they had not seen each other for a long time and were welcome back. The girl immediately rushed to him and started asking if he was okay. The guy answered yes, after which Liam asked if she was really going to go to the ball with such a hairstyle. Lena Lee grabbed this clue and said that really, it's still impossible to go like this. The young man replied that this would not work and he knew what to do. Then the younger brother began to mutter something and a magical glow appeared in his hands, after which he touched our heroine, and her long hair suddenly appeared as it had before. Loris was in complete shock and exclaimed that this was simply amazing, but she was sharply upset that even though it was incredible, now she definitely has to achieve this score. On the way, our heroine explained to him that under no circumstances should he deal with Phaeus. In addition, you can't act away from her. Let him always be nearby to see if he understands everything. Liam replied that he understood everything, because this was the second time she had told him this. Lena Lee was still worried that if something went wrong between her brother and the prince, it might end in execution, as it had before, especially if His Highness finds out that they have switched places with each other. When they arrived at the place, her brother told her to just keep her head up and everything would be fine. But now it was time to go. As she got out of the carriage, the girl thought to herself that there was no point in worrying. They had already gone too far, so they should be ready. Now, this is not just a ball, but a battlefield. Together, they will do everything as needed. Those present immediately began discussing the Lors twins and noted that this was the first time he had seen them at the ball together. By the way, they say that his sister is a rather arrogant girl. One of the guys objected that this simply cannot be. Since she is beautiful, the other added that they also say that she is very strong. Have they heard about it? Our heroine looked around and thought that she had never been to a ball before. She always thought that this kind of event was very boring. But everything around was so elegant and truly matched the level of the royal family. The young man had already begun to rush towards her in order to try to talk. A friend stopped him and said that it was not necessary, since Virgman was her fiancé. Lenily felt all these gazes on her and did not understand what was happening. So I asked my younger brother if she looked strange. Maybe there was something wrong with her. The guy replied that this was all nonsense, since today she is even more beautiful than usual. Then she drew attention to the luxurious table and noted that there were a lot of different dishes there and they looked quite appetizing. The young man laughed and said that even in full dress she remains herself. The girl was outraged by this and exclaimed that she hoped it was a compliment. The young man replied that of course he was very glad that his little sister did not change. Lenily then saw a secluded place with few people. It is not noticeable and in general it seems to be calm there. If they slip away unnoticed after a while, then everything should be in order. Therefore, she told her younger brother that they needed to go in that direction. But they didn't even have time to take a step when a girl materialized in front of them, turned to Liam, and said that her name was Maria Rush. Suddenly, she was pushed aside by other girls who exclaimed that who even allowed her to go out of line, after which they surrounded our heroine's younger brother from all sides. Neither he nor Lena Lee understood what was happening. Lorez noted to herself that apparently it was because of the academy that now her youngest had become popular among women. Meanwhile, the popular foursome Phaesius appeared at the gala event. Our heroine noted that she did something bad, so she needed to get out as soon as possible. She wanted to call her little brother, but when she turned around, she did not see him in the place where he was. Lena Lee began to panic, as she did not understand where he had gone. The girl wandered around the palace and still couldn't find him. Maybe he had already returned to the hall, but the Phaesias were there. Our heroine was so immersed in her thoughts that she did not notice Kyle and crashed into him. When it dawned on her who exactly she had bumped into, the girl thought to herself that he had completely forgotten her. She immediately asked Mr. Crecia for forgiveness and thought why she met him right now. The young man asked where her former cheerfulness had gone, after which he kissed her hand and said that it was the first time he had seen her like this. She just looked beautiful in this dress. The girl thanked him, but thought to herself that he just liked to watch her reaction. Kyle said that he didn't want anyone else but him to see her in this form. He even wanted to lock up such beauty somewhere. Our heroine thought that today she really looks so strange that she even needs to be locked up somewhere. After which the young man asked what she was doing in this place and why not in the hall. Lena Lee noted that if she told him that she was looking for Liam, he would just cheer up and follow her. This guy is a real devil in the flesh, so it's better not to say that. Therefore, she replied that this was not worthy of Mr. Krish's attention, and besides, she was already returning back. The young man replied that it was good, he was going to do the same, so they would go together. The girl began to panic because Kyle considered it so necessary to accompany her. The young man leaned towards her and asked if he could take Mrs. Lena Lee Lorez's hand, but our heroine understood that if she went with him, she would definitely meet the prince. The guy decided to put pressure on her and said that in this case, he would tell everyone her secret. So what would she do? The girl had no choice but to agree, because if everyone else found out about her secret, then it would not end well. When they entered the hall, everyone present immediately began to discuss them, that the guys were really a couple. This, of course, is upsetting, but they are both beautiful and look good together. But in fact, Lena Lee is engaged to the son of the Marquis Vergman. Lena Lee constantly heard these whispers and thought that everyone must be saying that she was not suitable for Kyle, the young man from Phaesius. At that moment, the young man was watching her and thinking about what a funny girl she was. Then she abruptly bowed out and said that she had some urgent matters to attend to, so she would have to leave him. But in fact, the main reason was that she was afraid that she would meet the prince and needed to find Liam. But suddenly the guy stopped her and asked what about one dance. Our heroine asked if Mr. Crecia knew the rules of the first dance because for sure he did. In their country, the rule of the first dance is that only the engaged or relatives can perform it. What will happen if she dances with Kyle, who is not her fiancé? This young man understands everything perfectly, but why does he need it? Then she asked that maybe he was making fun of her again, but he wouldn't deceive her anymore. Mr. Crecia smiled wryly and replied that what a pity. Lena Lee couldn't believe that she spent so much time searching, but she never found her brother. Where did he go? Liam couldn't leave her and return home. The younger one would never do that. Suddenly, a young man approached her and asked if the daughter of the Marquis of Lore would mind dancing with him. Another young man appeared behind him, who pushed the first one away with his hand and declared that she had better choose him. Then the guys started quarreling among themselves about this. But the girl didn't understand why everyone suddenly invited her. Maybe it was influenced by the fact that Kyle was accompanying her, after which our heroine noticed that the balcony was very close to her. Therefore, she quickly asked for forgiveness and said that she remembered something very important, so she would go already. Lena Lee understood that this was wrong and that it was impossible to do this, but this was the only way to leave the hall and climbed over the railing. As she flew down, she saw the crown prince and noted that her second life had also come to an end. After she fell on him, she thought that it was just some kind of horror that he was even doing here, because she was sure that Dylan was in the hall. Our heroine did not know what to do in such a situation and, stuttering, asked him for forgiveness. The young man hissed that she had the courage to continue sitting on him. But when he looked at her carefully, He muttered in shock that she was Liam Laura's. Lenali was shocked. What should she do? How did he even recognize her? The guy asked in surprise why he was in this form. Then our heroine decided that she needed to calm down, because now she was a girl. The guy didn't understand anything. He just confused her with her brother. Therefore, she exclaimed that no, in fact, she is his older sister. Then she bowed and added that Liam is her younger twin brother, and her name is Lenali. The young man looked at her and thought that there was a feeling that it was Laurie, dressed in a dress, and his face, voice, and energy. Everything was exactly like his, then muttered that those rumors were true. At first, the girl did not understand what rumors he was talking about, but then she remembered how Dylan stated that her family was known for having an ill-mannered girl who had not yet been married. Therefore, she got angry and exclaimed that he really wanted to say that she was a stubborn girl who was disgracing her family. Then Lenali realized what she had done. How dare she talk to the crown prince like that? But unexpectedly, His Highness laughed loudly after her attack. Then he said that it seems that the rumors turned out to be true after all. First, she jumped on him from the balcony, and after everything she also reproached him for this. What a careless girl. Our heroine was surprised that he was not angry and asked for forgiveness again, after which she drew attention to his hand and exclaimed that because of it, Dylan hurt himself. The young man replied that it was okay, it would heal quickly, but Lenali had already begun to bandage his hand with a handkerchief, saying that it could hardly be called first aid, but at least it was like that. His Highness did not understand why. When he saw her, his heart began to beat faster. After our heroine finished, she exclaimed that later, let him properly treat the wound. Then she was afraid that she had touched the crown prince without permission, and therefore asked for forgiveness. The young man could not understand why, if this is the sister of that guy, then why does he constantly remember him? Loris thought to herself that this was definitely the end. Not only did she jump on him, causing him to fall, but she also spoke to him inappropriately. Plus, she hurt him. If Dylan still decides to execute her, then it will be a failure. Therefore, she decided that it was better to run away before he said this, and began to say that she was then, but she didn't have time to come up with anything, and froze. The guy thought to himself that maybe she was hungry and wanted to leave quickly or something. For the first time he meets such an unpredictable girl, she apologized with tears in her eyes, and then suddenly fell into a rage. Then she immediately became worried about him, and with all this, she quickly changes her expression. I would like to see her again. Our heroine apologized and quickly blurted out that it was time for her to go. But the young man suddenly grabbed her hand and asked her to stop. Whereupon His Highness asked if they could meet again. A lot happened after that, so they weren't able to have a proper conversation. But I wonder what he even meant. The next day, Dylan approached her and began muttering something inaudible about his sister. The girl began to panic that His Highness was really angry because of the bruise. He doesn't want to say that his sister was sentenced to death and Liam won't see her again. Therefore, just in case, she began to bow and say that Lenali asked her to convey her apologies to him for hurting him. The young man blushed and asked what she really told him about him. The girl carefully answered that yes, but she thought to herself that even though it was her. When the young man thought about her answer, our heroine noted that he did not seem angry. Dylan thought that they really were incredibly similar. Even if so, then why did he remember Lenali Lores and why his heart was beating so much? Since when has it been pounding around him like crazy? They are twins. That's why they have the same faces. But he's a guy. Then it dawned on the young man that he simply liked the face of Liam's older sister. After which he calmed down and noted that that was why his heart was beating like that. When our heroine began to say that her sister was worried about that bruise, the guy exclaimed that Lenali was really worried about him. The girl did not expect that he would be so surprised that she was worried about him. But it seems that Dylan is not really angry, but he is behaving somehow strangely. Suddenly Arnold ran up to our heroine and exclaimed that they had not seen him since the ball. Then she saw Kyle and Eldick, stated that they were also here, and said hello. The young man said that they were not able to really talk at the ball, but only exchanged pleasantries. The young man said that by the way he was coming back, Lenali did not understand who exactly. Arnold exclaimed that it looks like now that he is with them, they will definitely win the Battle of Swords and Magic. The whole academy is already on edge. Eldick explained that he is a young, talented knight. His sword skills are recognized not only by the academy, but also by the Order of the Royal Guard, so the guy entered both directions at the same time. The young man is listed as a student at the academy, but he is called a ghost student. since he almost never appears in the institution due to his participation in various expeditions. Kyle stated that he was simply Dylan's rival. The Crown Prince objected that they were not rivals at all. His Highness was just not that strong. I thought to myself that besides, it seems that he should become Lenali Lore's groom. Arnold exclaimed that this is the first time he's heard Dylan admit defeat so easily. He already likes the guy because he's entertaining. Noticing that our heroine was thinking, Kyle asked what happened. The girl replied that everything was fine. He just didn't understand who the guys were talking about. The young man immediately whispered in her ear that it was actually about her future groom. Lenali was taken aback by the information she heard and exclaimed in surprise that Dick replied that Vergman should become the husband of his older sister. Doesn't the guy know about it? Our heroine replied that she knew, but she just wasn't aware that he was returning. Then it dawned on her that this seemed to be the letter she had received from her family. The guy said that he must be very busy, but he should read it as soon as possible. The girl, dumbfounded, replied that as soon as she returns, she will definitely read it. She thought to herself what she should do when he returns. She won't be able to understand what's going on in his head, even though the guy is her fiancé. The next day, during the carriage ride, Lenali still continued to think about what would happen now. If he is participating in the battle of swords and magic, then he should definitely come to this expedition camp. It is impossible to know what is going on in this young man's head and whether he will reveal her true face. My thoughts were interrupted by Agni, who said that he thought that the camp would be very fun. He was going there for the first time with such anticipation. Yesterday, he couldn't even sleep. Our heroine replied that this was true, but she thought to herself that in fact, this was not just an ordinary camp. Unexpectedly, the young man added that he was very sorry, but it seemed that Vergman would not come, and he really hoped that he would be able to train with the young talent. When Loris asked if he really wouldn't come, the guy replied that he was a very busy man. Liam knew him, so he should know all the details. The girl immediately cheered up and was happy in her heart that everything would work out without meeting him. She could finally calm down and concentrate on the camp. After some time, the guys were already considering the schedule and division plan. From this, our heroine learned that there was one room for two. She did not think that it would be like this in the dormitory at the academy. After all, everyone has their own personal room. Plus, there's also a shared bath, so what should she do? The girl won't be able to wash with everyone else. Agni was happy that they were lucky. They would live together and become very good neighbors. Lenali panicked that it was bad luck that she would be in the same room with a guy. Suddenly, Kyle approached her and asked how about sleeping in the same room with him. The rest of the Phaesias were shocked by what they heard and looked in their direction in surprise. The Crown Prince asked what kind of jokes these were. The young man asked what was wrong with that, or did he plan to sleep with Liam? Lorez asked why. The guy replied that it was because his room had a private bathroom. Lenali remembered that Phaesias have their own separate rooms. Besides, Kyle knows that she is a girl and can take a bath alone. Plus everything, it is much less risky than living in the same room with Agni. This, of course, is not very nice in relation to her friend, but it is the best way out of this situation. The Crown Prince did not understand why they decided to live together. There was no need for this, and why Liam was thinking about the answer for so long. The girl thought that living in the same room with a guy is, of course, so-so, but if you choose between Agni and Kyle, then it will be a little easier with the latter. The young man was tired of waiting, so he took her by the arm and asked that he had finally decided whether he would live in the same room with him. After some time, the young man was already demonstrating Lenali's room and saying that although it was designed for one person, it was quite spacious. Dylan stayed there last year, so the place was completely rebuilt. Lores, after hearing this, thought to herself that it was no wonder that this place seemed too big and luxurious to her for some kind of camp. While the girl was muttering that the bed was so huge, even if it was only for one, the guy asked what she would do as a thank you. After all, he helps her only so that everyone else does not find out that she is a girl, so our heroine must thank him. Plus, she also got into trouble when she refused to let him dance at the ball. Our heroine at first began to get angry, but then noted that he was making her emotional again, but she was not going to follow his lead, so she confidently asked what he wanted Lenali to do. The young man grinned and thought to himself that her reaction was still just as interesting. Then, Kyle abruptly threw her onto the bed and said that, in this case, next time he wants to be her partner at the ball, of course, she will have to be in the guise of a girl. Initially, it was all just to kill time, but now it seems that everything is different. Now he wants her to belong only to him and no one else. Not even Dylan. Meanwhile, His Highness walked along the corridor and looked for Kyle's room. I thought to myself that he didn't like Liam at all. He just had a beautiful face, not even as a crown prince. He simply must be privy to the affairs of his subjects. When the young man approached the door, it turned out to be ajar, and he decided to look into it. There, His Highness saw a picture of Kyle pressing Liam to the bed and asking if the guy wanted to take a bath together. Everything is fine, because they have already seen each other naked. The more the prince listened, the more his misunderstanding grew. His Highness wondered what they could possibly be doing naked, since they were men. The young man could not stand it and immediately threw open the doors, shouting what they were even doing here. The young man replied that they were just having a good moment, so don't let it interfere. Linnalee didn't understand what he was talking about. From the outside, it probably looked as strange as possible. Dylan exclaimed that there really is such a relationship between them. They are both men. Lors tried to explain and say that he understood everything wrong, but Kyle replied that it had nothing to do with him. Wasn't he right? Hearing this, our heroine was very surprised and wondered what he was doing. His Highness asked Liam if this meant that everything was mutual between him and the magician. The girl began to push him away from her and shout that Kyle was just joking. The young man objected that in fact he was not really joking. Dylan came to the conclusion that this means Lors is all unpleasant and Crisia is forcing him. Kyle is a member of Facius, and therefore apparently Liam could not reject him, in which case it is necessary to help him out, after which he sharply pulled her towards him. A tense atmosphere appeared between the guys again, and it seemed as if lightning was flashing around. Linnalee didn't understand what was going on and why they were quarreling again. After some time, Eldic said that the training was over for today. They need to make sure that their body has time to rest properly. Let them take care of it. Our heroine thought to herself that they had a training session, so everything remained unclear. But what should she do with the room? Paying attention to the crowd that was standing near the notice board, Loris began to think that something was wrong, and she had a bad feeling. Dylan said he has changed the room allocation, so everyone should check their name. Coming closer, the girl saw that now she would live in the same room with His Highness. She did not understand why everything turned out this way. While Linnalee was completely terrified and did not understand what to do now, Kyle approached the prince and asked why Liam was in the same room with him. The young man replied that because he decided that it was dangerous for Lore to be in his presence alone. The guy is obliged to protect his people. This also applies to Liam. He is also his subject. The young man muttered that, in fact, His Highness could also be dangerous. Apparently, he just wants to be in the same room with Liam. His Highness lost his temper and shouted that that was not the point. Unlike him, he liked girls. Crisia began to leave and finally said that in fact he also only likes girls. The young man did not understand anything and wondered how to even perceive it. Meanwhile, Linnalee was hysterical. Why did she end up in the same room with him? The girl didn't want to get involved with the prince. It's unclear why everything turned out this way. Showing off his room, the prince said that it was definitely larger than Kyle's room, and he could use it. Looking at the fact that there was one large bed, our heroine wondered if they would really sleep together. The crown prince added that the sleeping place is huge, so the two of them can fit without any problems. Lores was freaking out that this was precisely the main problem. Even if she were a man, how could she sleep in the same bed with the prince? What if she suddenly tosses and turns in her sleep and accidentally kicks the young man? She will definitely be executed for this. Therefore, she said that it would be better to sleep on the sofa. It would be more than enough for him. The young man replied that he should calm down. Dylan would not touch him like Kyle did. Our heroine thought to herself that he was still mistaken in the situation with Crisia, but that was not the case at all. She wanted to try to explain something, but His Highness interrupted her, pointed to the door and told her to go to the bathroom first. The girl objected that in fact His Highness should be first. The young man replied that there was no need to think about it. He had one more thing to do, so he would go after him. Linnalee tried to argue with him again, but couldn't find the right words. The crown prince had already begun to lose his temper and shouted that he was then ordering him to go first. Loris thought to herself that despite the fact that they would be separated by one door, behind which the girl would be naked, she was located at a relatively large distance. Then, probably, if you were careful, everything would be fine. Therefore, she replied that she understood everything and, in this case, would go first. When our heroine entered the bathroom, the young man grabbed his head and thought about what he was doing. But still, the guy is Lennalee's brother, so Dylan must protect him. The crown prince told her that he wanted to meet again, but when would they be able to do this? Meanwhile, the girl relaxed in the hot bath and thought about how good she felt. But after a moment, she came to her senses and began to hit herself on the cheeks, since she couldn't let her guard down. Our heroine must take care not to reveal the fact that she is a girl. Therefore, she should still sleep not on the bed, but on the sofa. It will be safer. Suddenly, she drew attention to the spider in front of her and screamed with a heart-rending scream out of fear. The young man was dumbfounded by this and wondered what was going on there. When he entered there to ask if everything was okay, a frightened, half-naked girl rushed into his arms. Dylan thought that he instinctively hugged him, and in the end, a little more and he would see him naked. The girl immediately ran out of the bathroom and on the way shouted for him to forgive her for this. Already outside the door, I thought that I really hoped that he had not opened it. His Highness stood dumbfounded and did not understand what had just happened. Our heroine dropped by to ask for forgiveness again, but then I saw on the floor that same little spider that started it all. So Lenali screamed loudly again and slammed the door behind her. Already from behind the door, the young man heard that there was a spider there, which he could not stand. His Highness immediately picked it up and simply threw it out the window, after which he said that he was no longer in the bathroom, so he could come in calmly. Our heroine looked out and with tears in her eyes thanked him for getting rid of him. After some time, the crown prince lay down in the bath and noted to himself that it meant Liam was afraid of insects. But still, the young man was so soft and pleasant to the touch. He has such fair skin and delicate curves of his body, just like a girl. Dylan immediately began splashing water in his face in order to bring himself to his senses and say that he was imagining things. Loris is a guy from head to toe. Apparently, we shouldn't be surprised at all that Kyle liked someone like him. But then he again began to convince himself that they were both men, so how could this even happen to Crecia? If Lena Lee's brother looks like this, then the girl is simply incredible. His Highness began splashing water on his face again in order to drive away all these thoughts, after which he decided that it was time to go out and shouted for him to be given a towel. Then he looked around and realized that today, none of the servants were there. Drying himself with a towel, the young man thought that it would be just the two of them. Why was he so worried? But actually, he was a guy. So what questions could there be? As soon as the guy left the bathroom, our heroine turned to him to talk about what happened recently. But for some reason, the young man did not react to her and behaved rather strangely. So the girl came closer to him and asked what was wrong with him. Lenali touched his hand and noted that his body was so hot, blood rushed to his head. Suddenly, His Highness lost his balance and fell right on top of her. Lors immediately realized that her scream had just been very similar to a woman's. Then she noticed his blank look and noted that he was definitely dizzy from how long he had been sitting in the hot bath. After which she began to try to stir him up so that he would come down and shout that she would bring him water now. But suddenly the young man muttered exhaustedly that he should not go anywhere. When the crown prince raised his head, he saw Lena Lee with long hair looking at him with concern. His Majesty immediately began to mutter that he wanted to see her so much. After which he kissed her hand and added that he was constantly thinking about their soon meeting, and finally they were able to do it. Our heroine looked at him in surprise and thought that he seemed to confuse her with Lena Lee. The crown prince continued to say that since that day, he could not get her out of his mind. Loris was shocked by all this and did not understand why he was telling her such things. As the guy fell unconscious at her feet, Lena Lee noted that his heart was beating very fast, but still, he was the man who executed her family, so she couldn't let her guard down. The next day, the young man woke up and thought that it was really morning. When did he even fall asleep? Then it dawned on the young man that he had seen Lena Lee Lores in his own bedroom yesterday, after which I saw our heroine, who was sleeping in a bed and thought that he just felt bad yesterday, because how can a guy who sleeps in such a ridiculous position and drools be a girl? After some time, the girl reflected that she ended up sleeping on the bed with the prince. If her father had found out about this, he would have been beside himself with anger. Besides, yesterday she thought that she had been discovered and is sure that the prince still remembers that moment, judging by the way he behaved in the morning and woke him up with his leg. Then I wondered that maybe he had made an appointment with the girl in order to execute her. Then she realized that because of the heat, she simply couldn't find the right words. How come she hadn't thought of that right away? When she came to everyone else from the training camp, for some reason the guys looked at her very strangely. Everyone around was whispering that he really likes guys. They say that he got not only to Mr. Kyle, but also to His Majesty Dylan. This is a real shame for their honorary academy. Our heroine did not understand what kind of tense atmosphere was hovering around. The students were angry that they were selected based on their strength, and it was enough for that boy to simply sleep with the leadership. Why not give them a try? Meanwhile, Agni ran up to Lena Lee and exclaimed that he was very glad that he was okay. Lors asked if he was okay. The guy replied that Liam suddenly found himself in the same room with His Highness, and since they don't have a very good relationship with him, his friend was worried all night. Our heroine was simply pleased to the point of tears, and she thanked him with all her heart. The young man noted that he very rarely smiles so sweetly, after which he exclaimed that it doesn't matter, the guy will now go drink some water and come back. Kyle noted that due to Dylan's attraction to Liam, he is again becoming the subject of rumors. The young man asked what rumors and what he was talking about. The guy said that His Highness was not the smart one, and began to walk away. His Highness shouted what he meant, let him explain, but Eldic announced that it was time to start training. First let everyone break into pairs and exchange blows. Our heroine was sparring with her friend. Agni shouted that Liam opened up and was about to strike, but she dodged. After which Lena Lee attacked him with the hilt of her sword in the back of his head. After which the young man fell to the ground, face down, and the girl noted that victory was his. The young man was freaking out because for a split second he thought that he would finally defeat him. Giving him her hand, Laura said that to be honest, he was close. His sword skill had increased noticeably. Agni was glad that Liam noticed this, because lately even his body has become better. But then he added that for some reason the guy was too thin. Did he eat well? The girl replied that he had always had problems with gaining muscle mass, but she thought to herself that she couldn't tell him that it was all because that she is a girl. The friend exclaimed that it's okay and it's better to fight again. Lena Lee replied that it's better for him to rest at least a little. But the young man objected that it was better to continue until he forgot all these sensations. Suddenly, the young man saw a huge stream of flame right behind our heroine and shouted carefully. The girl only managed to sit down and cover her head with her hands. But then she saw a stranger come to her defense. After which the young man turned, looked at her carefully, and asked if everything was okay. The girl was taken aback when she realized who it was, and wondered where the guy came from. Didn't they say that he wouldn't come? This young man was none other than Rich Vergman, who is her future groom. They were interrupted by the cry of Agni, who worriedly asked if Liam Loris was safe. Our heroine replied that she was safe and unharmed, so everything was fine. Arnold exclaimed joyfully that Vergman managed to come to them. Suddenly, the young man threw the girl over his shoulder and began to carry her somewhere. Those around her did not understand what he was thinking and what came over him. Lena Lee screamed to be let go, but the young man did not react and simply moved on. When they reached their destination, Lores noted that it was a first aid station, but did not understand why. The guy simply said, his leg. Our heroine immediately saw a cut on her leg, but didn't even notice it until that moment. After which I wondered if he really brought her here because of some kind of scratch. On the young man's face, as always, there was not a single emotion. The girl breathed a sigh of relief, since the most important thing was that it seemed that he did not understand who she was. But suddenly Vergman asked what Lena Lee forgot in this place. Our heroine began to mutter that she didn't understand what Rich meant, but the guy interrupted her and said that there was no need to pretend, since he would recognize her smell from 1,000. As soon as he returned from the expedition, he immediately went to her, but she was not at the estate. The girl thought to herself that they became a couple only by the decision of their parents, and she always thought that he himself was not interested in her. The young man asked why it was not her younger brother Liam who was in this place now, but she. Our heroine did not understand what to do since she was completely figured out, so she urgently needed to come up with something. Therefore, I couldn't think of anything better than to say that I also wanted to become a knight. After all, is it fair that only her younger brother has such an opportunity? She too maybe wants to become a knight. Therefore, she persuaded her father to exchange them for at least 1 year. Suddenly, the young man said that Lena Lee should immediately return home. The girl objected that she was not going to do this. The guy told her to pack her things, since this was not the best place for a pleasant time. Lors replied that she did not consider her presence in this place as something pleasant, since she was serious. I thought to myself that I was there to change the future and protect my family. Therefore, let the young man not dare to tell her that this is all just for fun. The young man sighed heavily and said that she was still as stubborn as before. But be that as it may, let him prepare to leave. Rich will report everything to the academy himself. The girl did not understand what to do. At this rate, she would simply be sent home today. Even before the academy, the younger brother was indignant that his sister was really going to dress like a man. Was she even sure that everything would work out? The girl replied that yes, she would handle everything just fine. Liam asked what would happen if they were discovered. Besides, he was sure that she would meet with Rich and he would recognize her immediately. He could figure her out just by smell. Our heroine replied that they had not seen him for many years, so there was nothing to worry about. The young man told her to listen carefully. If Bergman recognizes her and she cannot do anything, then let him say the following. Lena then screamed what her brother told her then. If the guy tells everything at the academy, then she will not marry him. She thought to herself that although she was not sure that it would work, it was worth a try. Rich looked at her in surprise and said that he could not allow her to live surrounded by men. The girl objected that this was only for 1 year, and they had already agreed on everything with their father. After which she took the young man's hand and simply began to beg him. The guy asked if she could promise that after this she would marry him. Lena replied that yes, so she asks to be allowed to stay at the academy until that moment. Unexpectedly, the young man replied that, okay, they agreed. Loris could not believe that the words that she would not marry him were so effective. And yet she is surprised by the fact that he wants this marriage so much. She thought that he didn't care whether the guy was with her or with someone else. But in fact, all this doesn't matter now. The most important thing is that everything worked out for her, and now she can stay. After some time, Rich sparred with one of the young men and emerged victorious. Bergman noted that he thought that victory would be for this young man. This is called the art of wielding a sword. Such incredible strength for his age is too much. The girl thought to herself that it was very good that she managed to persuade him, but she was surprised that the young man was so popular. It seemed that it was not for nothing that he was called a young genius. After seeing it with her own eyes, it's no wonder why Agni praises him so much. From the moment they entered into a contract, Rich was busy actively working on the front line, and after a false accusation, their engagement was broken. As a result, they grew apart. And therefore, she doesn't really know anything about him. However, as a child, the young man was much weaker than her. Having won once again, the girl solemnly declared that victory was hers again. This upset the boy very much, so he couldn't help but burst into tears. Lena exclaimed, "Why is he crying again? Bergman is such a crybaby." Having calmed down a little, the kid asked if she only liked strong people. The girl replied that yes, a man who is physically and mentally strong is her dream. Rich exclaimed that in this case he would never cry again, and would train hard to become stronger than her. At that moment, Bergman was so cute, but before she even had time to look back, the guy grew up and gained strength. In her head, the young man remained the same crybaby that he was in those days, although now he is a completely different person. Now our heroine is not his rival and will not be able to defeat him. After some time, His Highness said that it was time for them to go to the room. Bergman asked to wait a minute and asked why the Crown Prince needed Liam. Dylan replied that it was probably because they lived together. Rich asked the question why he lives in a room with His Highness, because Liam is just the son of a marquis. This status does not suit him to live together. The guy replied that it seemed to him that there was no point in attaching importance to such things here, but it had nothing to do with him at all. The young man replied that he did. Liam is the younger brother of his bride, so he will look after him. Our heroine watched them and didn't understand why they were both so serious. Just like in that situation with Kyle, they didn't seem to get along very well with each other. When Bergman led her into the room, he said that he was sleeping in another place, and she could stay there alone. Lena smiled at him, thanked him for everything, and wished him good night, but thought to herself that I wonder if he only cares about her because she is a girl or something. The guy didn't understand how Loris could end up in such a place and how much he liked her. Since their last meeting, she had only become more charming. She was very beautiful and had long hair, but short hair suits her too. Lena is really beautiful. Does she really live in the academy among men? The girl is charming even in this guise. He is worried that she attracts the attention of different guys. But the young man became stronger in order to protect her, so he would never give her up to anyone. Our heroine's tense stay at the camp came to an end, and they returned to Fortis Academy. Agni noted that practice was already over, and he was even a little sad, as he was already starting to miss the camp. Then she turned her attention to Rich and remembered that he also studies in this place. He appears and disappears, so no one knows exactly when the guy is in Fortis. The young man asked if he really worked as a security guard for someone else. Suddenly, the blonde pointed her finger at the girl and yelled that she really wanted to die if she dared to wear a ribbon in her hair the same color as hers. The girl immediately began to ask for forgiveness from Mrs. Cicely, but she continued to yell that she was annoying her and let her get out of her sight, and quickly. The student responded in tears that it was good, and once again asked for forgiveness for her ignorance. The girl snorted and exclaimed that she seemed to have no idea where she was. Watching this scene, Agni asked if Liam knew who she was. Our heroine replied that she was seeing her for the first time. In fact, she had the feeling that she had already heard about this Sicily somewhere, but she couldn't remember. Suddenly, someone from the crowd shouted that Phages had appeared and they were incredible as always. The girl immediately changed her facial expression to a friendly one and exclaimed that she really wanted to see Mr. Dillon. His Highness looked at her menacingly and asked what she had forgotten at the academy. The girl replied that starting tomorrow she will temporarily study at Fortis. Then she began to extend her hand to the young man and ask if he would show her everything there, but the guy pulled away from her. After which, completely ignoring her, he told Phages that they needed to move on. Arnold laughed and said that Dillon was straight as always, and Miss Cicely was still as playful. Eldic said that only her future groom, that is, His Highness, can stop her thoughtless actions. The Crown Prince replied that he did not get engaged to her because he was in love, so if necessary, they could retaliate themselves. Our heroine was dumbfounded by this news and simply watched silently and followed. Then Lena Lee remembered that this girl, Cicely Nora Crazus, is Dillon's fiancé. An arrogant girl who tramples to smithereens people she doesn't like. If you cross her path, access to social events will be closed. This is where she got her nickname, the Poisonous Flower. Loris had only one thought on this matter. If you run into her, then trouble will definitely come, so it's better to just not get close. The next day, our heroine saw Dillon with a girl who asked him if he wanted to have lunch with her today. Lena Lee thought that she needed to stay away from her, so she tried to walk past them and remain unnoticed. When he saw her, the young man immediately pulled his hand away from Cicely and exclaimed that everything was absolutely not as he thought. Let him not misunderstand, of course, she is his fiancée, but let her just listen to him. After which, the young man became even more nervous and exclaimed that there was no need to overthink things. The young man grabbed his head and thought about why, from the outside, everything looked as if he was making excuses for him, but Crazus said that they needed to go. Otherwise, they would be late for class. When the girl tried to take his arm again, His Highness pulled her away sharply. The girl immediately lost her balance and began to fall down the stairs. Our heroine, who wanted to help her, flew head over heels down with her. While Lena Lee was thinking about what was good, what was not so high, the Crown Prince flew towards her, shouting if everything was okay with him. When Lores replied that everything was fine, Dillon exclaimed that there was no need to scare him like that anymore. Cicely immediately wondered why, first of all, he was worried not about her, but about him. Our heroine replied that nothing hurt anywhere, so everything was really fine. The guy replied that if this was true, then everything was fine. After some time, the girl was freaking out. Why is everything like this? Because she is his fiancée. Crazus should be his priority. Mr. Dillon has never smiled at her like that. Who is this guy anyway? He just put on a cute face and His Highness immediately melted. She will never forgive him. She doesn't like Liam. Suddenly, a voice came from behind her and asked if she wanted to get rid of him. The man offers her a deal. She just needs to follow his instructions. Cicely clarified whether he could really help her deal with that guy. When the stranger replied that yes, the girl immediately asked to be brought up to date. After some time, our heroine was going about her business and heard someone calling her name. It turned out to be Cicely. She asked if he was going to training now. If the guy didn't mind, then she would like to walk a little with him. Lena Lee replied that it was possible, but she thought to herself that she could not believe that someone who was not interested in anyone except the prince suddenly paid attention to her. Moreover, lately this attention has become too much. What does she want from her? On the way, the girl apologized and said that in fact there was something that she would like to tell him, but not here, but in another place. When they came to a secluded place, our heroine asked what she wanted to talk to him about. After hesitating a little, the girl stated that she wanted to say that she had fallen in love with Lore. Lena Lee was very surprised because how is this even possible? She exclaimed out loud that she was actually the fiancée of His Highness Crown Prince Dillon. Crazus muttered that it was true, the master really loves her with all his heart, and also constantly reminds her of his love, but she cannot reciprocate his feelings. The girl thought to herself what she was talking about because he behaves colder than an iceberg with her, so how can he constantly remind her of his love? Cicely continued that the one she loves is only Mr. Loris. Then abruptly she pulled her towards her, tore the dress on her chest, and began to scream loudly. Our heroine did not understand what was happening at all, and Krasis continued to scream for her to be saved and for someone to come to the rescue. The guards immediately burst into the room and asked what was going on. Seeing the girl in torn clothes and all in tears, the men shouted that how dare he do this to the mistress, let him immediately move away from her. The girl began to try to explain everything and tell them to wait a minute, since everything is not as it looks from the outside. But the guards still rushed to attack her and had to fight him off. Lenely did not understand what was happening and why Mrs. Cicely did this. The girl screamed for them to immediately grab this young man. Our heroine fought with men and did not understand why she decided to set her up. At this rate, she would be sent to jail due to a false association. Something must be done in order to gain time. As soon as she began to think that things were bad and she couldn't cope, Bergman came to the rescue. The young man immediately exclaimed that first they would have to deal with him. Not even a minute had passed before the guy managed to neutralize the attacking guards. His Highness immediately appeared in the room and asked what was going on. The rest of the Phages were peeking out from behind the crown prince. Cicely, all in tears, immediately threw herself on his chest and exclaimed that she was so scared because Monsieur Laure had suddenly attacked her. She, after all, is his fiancé, and the guy suddenly began to let his hands go. Krasis didn't give him any permission. Our heroine understood that things were bad. Even if she said that it was not so, most likely they would not believe her. What awaits her for attacking the prince's fiancé? In the worst case, her family will also be brought to justice. Lenely has been trying so hard all this time, but it seems execution is still inevitable. The girl added that she also heard that he pesters other students of the academy and seduces them, a dirty homosexual. How can such a person even be in Fortis under the leadership of Prince Delana himself? This is also a blow to his authority. This guy needs to be expelled from the academy immediately. But suddenly the crown prince said that Laure is his friend, so every word spoken against him, he will take against himself. Lenely was shocked that his Highness believed her and not Mrs. Cicely. The young man turned to his fiancée and said that it seemed that she had said something else about his authority. Did she really think that it could be undermined by something like this? Even though, unfortunately, she is his fiancée, he will not allow himself to be insulted. The girl began to try to justify herself and explain that she did not intend to insult him. But the young man interrupted her and said that with the power given to him as crown prince, Cicely Nora Krasis, he would carry out her sentence. The girl screamed that what other sentence? Everything was not at all what he thought. She was forced. She didn't want anything like that. But her Highness hissed menacingly what she just said. Let her repeat it. The girl did not try to argue with him and simply fell to her knees right in front of his Highness. When the guy started asking Lors how he was feeling, Lenely immediately imagined that he would now talk about execution. Therefore, she loudly screamed the word no and sharply pushed his hand away from her. Then she began to cry, because it was very scary. If her family was executed again before her eyes, the girl simply would not bear it. Our heroine covered her ears with her hands and began to shout loudly that enough was enough. There was no need to kill them. Bergman immediately told Liam to watch his words, after which he asked for forgiveness from his Highness and added that he would have a conversation with him. Then she grabbed Lenely by the hand and began to quickly lead her out of this room. The Crown Prince didn't understand what had just happened because he just wanted to help. Why did it all turn out this way? Was it really his fault again? Therefore, the young man began to get angry that he had gone too wild, after which he shouted that the execution was being cancelled. Let them take Cicely to prison. Arnold wanted to tell him something and reached out to touch his shoulder. But his Highness was completely furious and shouted not to touch him. The young man exclaimed that he was so angry and should cool down at least a little. Kyle thought to himself that Dylan's bad habit had come out again. He suddenly lost track of the whole situation and rushed forward at full speed, hurting not only himself, but also those close to him. It seems that the young man had a similar expression on his face the very day his mother died. Although he became calmer after meeting Lenely, the guy really hopes that the old crown prince will not interfere with his present. While the girl was sitting in prison, she heard the voice of that same stranger who said that she looked very pitiful. She immediately exclaimed how he ended up there. The man replied that with the help of magic, it's all as easy as shelling pears. Cicely screamed that if this is so, then let him immediately get her out of there. Because what happened to her was all because of him. It was all his fault. The young man replied that she made her choice herself. Then she almost talked about him. Therefore, the bad girl deserves to be punished, after which she stretched her hand forward and a magical formation appeared there. The girl grabbed her throat and asked what he just did. The stranger replied that he had placed a curse on her. If she tried to tell them the truth, it would activate and immediately kill her. After which he turned around and began to leave, saying that she was the only one to blame for everything. After some time, Rich came to Lena Lee and asked for forgiveness for being so sudden, but he was soon going on an expedition with a nightly order, so he came to see her before leaving. The girl apologized for her recent behavior and said that she didn't know what came over her, but that everything was fine now. The guy asked that she would probably go home for the summer holidays, and when he returned from the expedition, he would definitely visit her. Let the girl not forget. No matter what happens, he will always be on her side. Looking after him, Loris thought that he really cares about her, very unexpectedly, but even he has his sweet sides. But our heroine was very worried about the question of why he was suddenly going to visit her parental home. Miss Cicely has been released from prison, but is said to have been under a high-level curse that prevents her from telling the truth about what happened. Therefore, Lena Lee still doesn't know exactly why she did this to her. She only said that she was forced, the alleged criminal was never found. Could it be the same person who poured the poison at the tea party? In addition, having lost control, she behaved terribly towards His Highness Dylan and took out her anger on him. Since then, they have never seen each other. But it was the prince who executed her family. He even wanted to behead his own bride. It's probably better for her not to mess with him. This would be the right decision. A few days later, our heroine collected all her things and noted that she just had to remember to take them home with her tomorrow. A lot has happened in the last couple of months. She fell straight onto the prince from the balcony, ran out to him naked, and much more. After which our heroine realized that while all her memories are only about Dylan, suddenly she heard a bird knocking on her window, so she went to open it. When the dove threw the letter into her hands, the girl noted that it was Liam's magic. I wonder what happened. Does she really need to return earlier than planned? Her father is probably shedding tears there. The letter said that trouble had happened. Why did His Highness come to visit her, and also said that he would not leave until he met her. Her brother would try to get rid of him somehow, but let her come anyway, as soon as possible. Our heroine was very surprised that the crown prince forgot in their house. She really hopes that he did not come to execute her for pushing him away. In general, it's very strange that the guy came to meet her, or rather, Lena Lee. Even though she was told to return quickly, it would take half a day or even more to get home. What to do in this situation? She could return in an instant with the help of moving magic. But she has no magic at all. Who can use it? It suddenly dawned on her that there was a person in the academy who could perform high-level magic. Meanwhile, Kyle sat in his room in the special dorm allocated for Phaesius. A servant looked in on the young man and said that guests had come to see him. The young man was surprised what other guests were there. He was going to go home today, so he didn't make an appointment with anyone. He didn't want to be disturbed. Let him say that there was no one in the bedroom. The man muttered that the fact is that this man is his junior comrade. When the guy heard that it was Liam Loris, he began to get up from his chair and said that that's what he said right away. After which he thanked him for reporting this and said that he would talk to him on his own. When the young man saw her, he asked what happened, because he did not expect to see her. The girl immediately rushed to him and began to ask forgiveness for the suddenness, after which she exclaimed that she had one request for him and the life of our heroine depended on it. Kyle pushed her against the wall and said that since it was a matter of life and death, then the price must be high enough. Until recently, the young man was worried about her condition, but as he sees, now she is much better. After which the young man asked what they would do with her. Lena Lee noted that there definitely must be some kind of payment, because the guy is one of the most influential people in the academy. Our heroine exclaimed that it was good. She would do everything in her power, if only she could help. The guy looked at her carefully and said that her naivety scared him. How can anyone so easily agree to literally anything? She should think more rationally. Then, after a pause, he added that it was clear from her face that she had no idea what the young man was talking about. After which he leaned over to kiss her and said that this is precisely the meaning he puts into the concept of a high price. Lena Lee did not expect this, so she sharply pushed him away and ran to the side. Chrysia smiled and asked if she now understood what the young man even wanted. He still kept her secret a secret. Did she think that it was time to pay the bills, for example, with a kiss? The girl thought to herself that he really helped her out more than once, but a kiss was too much. Then the guy smiled and clarified what kind of request it was, whether it was worth her kiss, because whatever one may say, he is the only one she asks for help every time. Our heroine came up with a compromise solution, and she exclaimed that she would definitely dance with him at the next ball. Kyle noted that he was completely involved, as he saw her energy had already returned, and added that this time he would give in to her. After which he asked what she wanted him to do, Lenali replied that he should immediately take her home. The guy muttered that it was strange. She said that it was a matter of life and death, but it turned out that it was a mere trifle. Lores almost blurted out that the prince was at her house, but thought in time that it was better for him not to know about his arrival. There was no need to talk about it at all, because every time fate brings these two together, something is sure to happen. Therefore, I exclaimed that it was nothing. I just urgently needed to go home to eat. The guy replied that it was okay. After some time, she was already standing in the center of the magic circle, and Kyle told her that she did not need to leave it. While Crecia was whispering the spell, Lenali thought that the guy is right. All she does is ask him for help and does not give anything in return. She completely ignores him. Is the girl really that terrible? After all, if a young man gets bored, he can tell her secret. Remembering what the young man had said, she sharply pulled him by the tie and kissed him on the cheek. Then she exclaimed that now they should be on the same page and began to teleport. Already at home, the girl thought that maybe she didn't need to do this after all, because it's impossible before the wedding. Our heroine has never been kissed at all, not even on the cheek. How should she behave now during her next meeting with Kyle? Why did she start to drive away all these thoughts from herself and convince her that it was just gratitude, so this kiss doesn't have any meaning? So there's no need to take it to heart. Suddenly, Liam opened the doors to the room and stated that his sister had indeed already returned. Lenali was scared and exclaimed how he even guessed about this. Heading in her direction, the young man said that he felt powerful magic nearby, but that's not what he's talking about now. He immediately began to grow her hair using magic, and at the same time shouted at her to change her clothes as soon as possible, since the situation was getting worse and worse. They all lied, saying that she was still getting ready, and thank God His Highness agreed to wait. After which, the younger one literally threw it into the hands of the maids and declared that now the rest was theirs. The girls immediately surrounded her from all sides and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. Just think, the Crown Prince himself came to see her. They will now do everything in the best possible way. When the preparations were over, her mother ran up to her and asked what it all meant. She couldn't believe that Dylan himself came specifically to meet her when they didn't have time to get so close. Her father began to shout whether she had done something at the academy. She couldn't act rudely towards His Highness. Lenali replied that she would never do it, and thought to herself that she couldn't say for sure. Mom pushed the man aside and noted that the Crown Prince was simply a magnificent young man. The guy is handsome and creates the same impression that people talk about. If he became her partner, she would be very happy for them. Dad shouted that she was even saying such a thing. There was no way they could cancel the engagement to Vergman. In addition, His Highness probably already has a fiancé. But his mother pushed him aside again and asked her daughter who she had more heart for, Rich or Dylan. Our heroine noted to herself that her mother has not changed at all and is still the same as before. These topics of conversation are her favorite. Then she answered that their relationship with His Highness is not what they think about, but noted to herself that why then did he come to the meeting not with Liam, but with her? Perhaps the Crown Prince decided to find out something after he suffered a severe bruise on his hand at the ball because of her. The brother exclaimed that they were talking too much. Dylan was actually still waiting. They took him to the gazebo in the garden, so let his sister quickly run there. On the way, the girl thought about what could possibly be on his mind if he is not going to leave until he meets her in person, since it has come to this. Otherwise, she has no other choice but to see him. But the young man still remains the one who executed her family. In any case, he must forget about his feelings and emotions. Lena Lee is the daughter of a marquis, so she must focus her mind properly. Meanwhile, the guy couldn't get it out of his head that why Liam burst into tears. Because the Crown Prince only wanted to protect him. What went wrong? At the moment, he came here in a fit of emotion, and without any warning, perhaps Lena Lee knows the true reason for his tears. But this is by no means because His Highness wanted to meet the young man's daughter. Meanwhile, a girl had already approached him, greeted Dylan, thanked him for waiting, and asked how she could help him. The young man was speechless at first, but then he muttered that she was simply beautiful and so beautiful, like a goddess. Our heroine asked him not to flirt with her, otherwise she might misunderstand him. His Highness replied that he had never said such a thing to anyone before. When they sat down at the table, the girl wondered what she was thinking about, since he said that she looked like a goddess. Lena Lee is sure that this is not the first time he has said something like this, so he cannot be trusted. The young man decided to break the heavy silence and said that the weather was beautiful outside today. Our heroine replied that it was for sure. Then he asked what she was doing today. Lors replied that it was personal matters. Noticing that the atmosphere was tense, the guy asked if she was angry with him for arriving without warning. When the girl said no, the crown prince asked if something else had made her angry. Our heroine replied that no and reminded that they were both engaged in fact, so she did not see anything good in these meetings. But I thought to myself that if he knew what really angered her, she just didn't want to get involved with the person who did such a terrible thing to her family. Suddenly, the young man got angry and shouted that he had no idea that they had twins on their minds, which is why both of them were constantly angry. Lena Lee looked at him menacingly and asked if he himself guessed, if he didn't understand what she was talking about, if the guy thought that Lors didn't know how he mocked Liam in front of everyone. The young man's expression immediately changed, and he quietly replied that this was already in the past. Perhaps when he first met him, he didn't like her brother because Dylan saw him as a rival. His Highness cannot deny this, but lately everything has been different. The girl interrupted him and asked that this was all. Did he understand how much Liam suffered? Did the guy even realize this? I thought to myself that her youngest was constantly under this oppression so that the family would not worry about him. The young man kept it a secret, but when everything came to light, it was too late, and all only because he allegedly did not like Liam. The crown prince replied that he was very sorry. It was all because of his own weakness. He understood that now it was too late to apologize. Initially, it was simple hostility. His hair color, eye color was like his mother's. The guy thought that he had already forgotten about it. The terrible memory that Dylan wanted so badly to get rid of resurfaced when he met Liam, so he literally went crazy. Our heroine noticed that he looked very downcast and the guy was thinking about something, but did not understand what was happening. As they walked through the garden, Lena Lee thought that she never expected the crown prince to suddenly ask for forgiveness. But why did the young man look so downcast? It wasn't because of his own actions. Suddenly the girl tripped and began to fly down because she could not stay on her feet. The young man immediately grabbed her, told her to walk carefully, and asked if she had hurt herself. Lors replied that everything was fine, after which it dawned on her that she was too close to His Highness, so she pushed him away and thanked him. But the guy held her tightly to him, and the girl did not understand what he was doing and said that everything was fine with her, so she could be released. The young man asked to be allowed to stand with her like this, at least a little longer. Lors shouted that it was impossible. If someone noticed, they would think that there was something between them. But His Highness replied that he didn't care, let others think what they wanted, after which he added that he really liked her. And from the very day the young man first saw her, our heroine thought that from what first day was it really when she fell on him from the balcony? Lena Lee replied that enough of such jokes. She was sure that this was a one-time misconception, but the guy objected that the girl was mistaken. Lors exclaimed that she has a fiancé, and the crown prince also has a fiancé. The young man replied that from that very day he thinks only about her, no matter what he does. Only she is in his head. The girl immediately remembered the words of Cicely that in fact Mr. Dylan loves her, his bride, with all his heart, and he always reminds her of his love. Therefore, I decided that the young man most likely says such words only when he himself needs it. The guy cannot be trusted. Then she said that apparently for him, His Highness, meeting a person like her was something new. The crown prince shouted that this was not the case at all. He liked her and was sincere with her. He had never thought about someone so often that just thinking about it made his heart beat like crazy. Our heroine thought about whether he was telling the truth, but then why on that day he was going to execute Mrs. Cecile, who was his beloved bride, and besides, why was it necessary to execute her family? Therefore, she answered that sooner or later his feelings would cool down and he would want to execute her just as Krasis was going to. The young man was shocked by what she said and could not even squeeze out a word. Our heroine began to run away and did not understand what to do now because she did not want to say this. But he is a cruel prince, one who can even execute his bride, whom he once loved. The young man is simply terrible, but she is most likely the most terrible person here. Despite her words somewhere deep down, the girl thinks that he will not kill her. Without realizing it, she began to trust him, even though she hated him so much. Lena Lee grabbed her head and began to ask herself to come to her senses, because this man is responsible for the execution of her family. Only this is enough to mean that he cannot be trusted. Suddenly a young man appeared, grabbed her by the hand and asked her to wait, so as not to run away from him. But our heroine tried to break free and screamed for him to let her go, please. His Highness shouted that no, let him listen to him. He would not execute her under any circumstances. Lena Lee exclaimed that how could he say that someday his feelings for her would cool down. The young man replied that even if so, he should not be pushed away by the feelings that he already has. Our heroine thought to herself, what next? What about the execution of her family? This fact is obvious, no matter how sincere he is, but she should not trust him. But then she noticed his gaze and wondered why Dylan was looking at her like that, as if he now and the prince from the past were completely different people. The young man said that he was not asking her to reciprocate. He only wanted to express his feelings to her. No one had ever loved the crown prince, so he thought that he simply did not know such a feeling as love. Therefore, now the young man wants to hold on to this feeling for as long as possible. Meanwhile, Liam, who overheard all this, began to really panic, because since when has his sister been in such a relationship with Dylan? Therefore, I decided to help the eldest just in case and began shouting her name and asking where she was. The girl immediately asked His Highness to leave for today, after which she said goodbye and went to meet her younger brother. When he saw Liam, the crown prince wondered if he had always been so tall before he seemed more miniature and fragile, plus his voice was a little lower. After some time, the young man said that he was very surprised whether His Highness really liked her so much, when they even managed to get so close. The brother believed that the prince was a terrible person, but who would have thought that he had so many feelings? The guy even for a second thought that he was in some kind of novel. The guy doesn't know if he should say this, but they just look great together. Lena Lee replied that there is no need to talk about this for fun. How can they be suitable for each other with the crown prince? There is no need to joke like that. The young man asked why she rejected him so vehemently. Liam had been asking this question for a long time. Plus, she even decided to dress up as a man in order to go to the academy. What is her sister hiding from him? The girl can share anything with him because he is her younger brother. Our heroine thought to herself that he constantly suffered, kept all the pain inside himself. Could she allow him to share those terrible memories with her? Should she tell her that in the past they were all executed, and would he even believe? The young man added that he would be on her side no matter what. Lores burst into tears, thanked him, and asked if he would listen to her. Lena Lee told about everything, that she was reborn, that all members of their family were killed by the prince, and that now she is trying her best to change the future. Liam listened to her story in all seriousness. Unexpectedly, the young man asked if she was sure that this was the work of the prince himself. Lores asked what he meant. The guy replied that the prince seemed to him to be a very timid person and unable to restrain his feelings. He did not think that after her rebirth his character had changed. He can't even wrap his head around how His Highness, who doesn't look like a two-faced person, could plan all this alone. The girl asked if he wanted to say that he was controlled by someone from outside, and it was this person who was to blame for the death of their family. Liam replied that firstly, his false accusations, and secondly, her broken engagement to Bergman. Thirdly, the fact that at the time of their execution he was on an expedition. Somehow the circumstances turned out too well. If the young man had not left, he would definitely have tried to prevent this. Our heroine thought that indeed, that time she was never able to calmly think about everything. The younger brother asked how she even thought about this. The Lores and Bergman families are families of descendants of knights, each with their own distinguished history. Her engagement to Rich would have strengthened their alliance, so it can be assumed that this, in turn, would have upset the balance of power of the aristocrats to no small extent. However, His Highness Dylan, as a member of the imperial family, before such a marriage would not have cared whether there was anyone else other than the prince who would benefit from getting rid of their family. The girl wondered if this was even possible, because she didn't even think about it, and always believed that only the crown prince was to blame for everything, which is why she always hated him. The younger brother added that be that as it may, this is just his guess. Our heroine felt terrible for treating him that way. The young man said that from now on they would act together. He was sorry that before that she had to cope with everything alone, and then thanked her for trying so hard. Lenali burst into tears and thought that now she has Liam, she is very happy about it. A few days later, Lors and Bergman were traveling somewhere in a carriage. The young man could not get out of his head that his bride was beautiful, as always. In every dress she looked simply incomparable, but her languid appearance is also no less wonderful. Other men are unworthy to see such beauty. He would have refused if it weren't for the invitation to the ball from Chrissia's family. And now it's too late to go back. The girl looked at him and did not understand what was happening. It seems that Rich is not in the mood today. He frowns more than usual. When they saw Bergman and Lenali, everyone present was surprised that the gentleman had come with a couple. They would never have thought that they would suddenly see him at the ball. From afar, our heroine saw the same four from Phaesius. Lenali didn't understand how to look His Highness in the eyes after everything that had happened. When she saw Kyle, Loris remembered telling him that she would definitely dance with him at the next ball. The girl understood that she had made a promise to him, but now it is completely impossible. What to do now? Rich is already in a bad mood, plus the situation with the prince is not easy. She immediately had a bad feeling about today's ball. Lenali looked around and thought that this, of course, is not surprising, but still the Duke's house is incredibly luxurious. This is her first time at the ball with Bergman, but despite all this, the guy is clearly not in a good mood today. Usually, Rich avoids such events, from which one can conclude that he does not like them, but today he agreed only because she went. Suddenly, Kyle materialized next to her and greeted Miss Lenali Lors. Stuttering, our heroine greeted Mr. Krisha in return and thanked him for the invitation. She was immediately closed by Bergman, who angrily thanked Kyle for the invitation. The young man replied that it was unexpected that he also decided to come, although he would have been satisfied only with her presence. The guy hissed that Lenali was his fiancé and there was no work in the nightly order yet, so he had free time. The young man retorted that the fact remains that he doesn't really attend balls, does he? Kyle thought that he was keeping sweet Lenali locked up under the pretext of work. After these words, Rich immediately grabbed our heroine and said that they needed to go. Already on the balcony, the guy thought that, as he thought, she was quite popular among men. This could be understood from the looks of those guys. Was there really such increased attention to her at every event? Plus, this Chrysia, the young man believed that girls were not interesting to him, but obviously the guy had his eye on his bride. His thoughts were interrupted by the voice of a girl who said that they had just arrived, and he already wanted to leave. The guy replied that they would stay in this place until the end of the evening, but he thought to himself that it was safe on the balcony. No one would stare at his beautiful Lenali. When our heroine asked why, the guy replied that he didn't want anyone to look at her. Lenali thought to herself that she really looked so bad today that he was embarrassed to be around her. Then she got angry and screamed that she had had enough, since he was so uncomfortable because of her. Then she would go dance with Mr. Chrysia. The young man asked in surprise why she was mentioning his name again. Lores replied that he didn't like her company. The young man grabbed her hand and exclaimed that this is not so. If she is not his date, then there is no point in dancing. Then he added that he put it a little differently, that is, he does not want others to enjoy her beauty. The girl was surprised that this was exactly the same Rich she knew. It seemed that he was not joking. Our heroine replied that she understood everything wrong and asked for forgiveness for being angry. But they have come such a long way to attend the ball, so they need to dance. While the guys were dancing, everyone present was discussing what a charming couple they were. They couldn't help but make them smile. Lenali said that she thought he was only good at wielding a sword, but it turns out the guy is good at dancing too. The young man replied that she did too, but she had calluses from the sword, let her take care of her hands. The girl was indignant that he spoke like her father. She's been training for a long time, so there's nothing she can do about it. Bergman thought that she was simply incredible at dancing, but how annoying it was that the men around her admired her. Still, it was calmer on the balcony, but retreating was no longer an option. His Highness watched them from the side and thought that if only he would dance with her, although this was just his fantasy. The girls present discussed that the Crown Prince does not take his eyes off her, but they don't think so. One of them said that she also thought about this, and also the incident that happened during the holidays. Dylan came to her for a personal meeting. Is this really true? But the lady has Rich. Even now it is clear that they are an ideal couple. Kyle, who heard all this, began to replay in his head that His Highness was at the Lores house during the holidays. Then the young man remembered how the girl persuaded him to fulfill the request on which her life depended, and everything began to dawn on him. Meanwhile, our heroine was thinking that this was her first dance at the ball, and she was very grateful to Bergman that it was a success. Suddenly, Chrissia's voice came from behind and asked if Mrs. Lors could also give him her dance. Lena Lee thought to herself that she made a promise to him that she would dance with him, but right now she couldn't do that under any circumstances. Kyle took our heroine by the hand and said that it was very noisy here. Why don't they retire somewhere else? Then a magical glow appeared, after which they abruptly disappeared. The young man was furious and did not understand what Chrissia was up to. When they found themselves in the garden, the girl asked why this happened so suddenly. The guy replied that it was simply time for someone to pay their bills. Lena Lee replied that she did not go back on her promise, but there was no question of him dragging her away by force. The guy replied that it looked like she didn't want to dance with him from the very beginning. Loris thought to herself that Kyle invited her right in front of Richa, who is her fiancé. Doesn't he understand how it looks from the outside? Looking around, the girl saw beautiful flowers and noted that this garden was simply wonderful. The young man replied that this was his only favorite place in this house. This is where he would like to dance with her. No one can stop them there. There is no one else in the garden except them. Our heroine noted to herself that in such a wonderful place, also with Kyle, just like with a prince from a fairy tale. But why doesn't the guy even look at her? The atmosphere next to him is different from usual. Suddenly the young man sharply led her to the side and she was frightened by surprise. This outraged her, so she exclaimed that the young man should be more careful. Then she looked at him and asked if it seemed to her, or if he was still angry, because today he was not the same as usual. Krisha replied that he wasn't angry, but that she was hiding something from him. Lena Lee asked what he was talking about, but thought to herself that she had really deceived him about something. The young man responded by asking whether she would continue to pretend that nothing had happened. The young man, for example, heard that Dylan came to her estate on vacation. The girl asked in surprise how he knew this at all. The guy asked if she liked using him in this way. Loris replied that she did not. She had no bad intentions. Kyle asked if she remembered what he told her back then. If he got tired of all this, he would tell about everything. Now the situation is clearly not in favor of the young man. The girl was afraid that he really wanted to reveal her secret. She really didn't tell Chrissia that the prince came to see her. But she didn't understand why this made the young man so angry that she asked him. The guy asked that she really didn't understand who he was for her at all. A convenient puppet, or what? Our heroine did not expect such an answer, and immediately began to deny everything. Kyle asked if Lena Lee knows how insidious she is. She understands his feelings, but still continues in the same spirit. This insensitivity of hers is very annoying. At first it was interesting to watch, but now it's not anymore. In addition, she treats Dylan completely differently. Is it really because he is the crown prince, or is it because he is someone special to her? The girl asked what he was getting at when talking about His Highness. The guy asked why she cares so much about him, despite the fact that he is the one who fulfills all her requests. It dawned on our heroine how it all looked in Kyle's eyes, but she just didn't want to be executed. What should she say now to make the guy believe her? Then the young man asked that maybe she even liked the crown prince. Lena Lee immediately began to remember how Dylan told her that he couldn't get her out of his head, that she was beautiful, like a goddess. That he has never told anyone this, but he likes her very much. But she exclaimed out loud that everything was completely wrong and she didn't like the guy. I thought to myself again that I simply didn't want him to execute her, so Crisia's judgment was wrong. Suddenly, the young man turned to Dylan and told him to get out, because eavesdropping was not good. A moment later, His Highness immediately appeared, looking upset. Our heroine was in shock and did not understand how he even ended up in this place. The Crown Prince replied that he had no intention of eavesdropping on anything but was simply passing by. I thought to myself that it turns out that Kyle and Lena Lee Lors know each other, and it seems are quite close, since the two of them are now in such a place. The young man asked if he had heard what the girl had recently said. The young man looked at him silently and did not answer. Chrissia muttered what kind of reaction this was, because he expected something a little different. Then he added, hugging our heroine, that in this case we can tell Dylan something even more interesting, namely the secret of Lena Lee Lors. His Highness asked in surprise what other secret was there. The girl exclaimed angrily that there was no need to say anything more. She quickly covered his mouth with her hands and began to think to herself, what should she do? A little more, and Kyle would definitely tell everything about the fact that Liam was actually her. Then she definitely couldn't avoid execution, so she couldn't think of anything better than to grab Chrissia by the hand and start leading him away from the prince. The young man grinned and said to His Highness, "See you soon." The crown prince did not understand what was happening at all and shouted after where they were going. On the way, the guy thought that she had chosen him. He was probably the only one who was happy about this. Lenali thought that Dylan shouldn't find them there, so everything should be in order. Then she apologized to the guy for being in such a hurry and asked if he was still angry. The young man replied that in fact, from the very beginning he did not hold a grudge against her. Lors threw him to the ground and told him to speak, looking straight into her eyes. She is stubborn and stupid, so if she doesn't say it directly, she won't understand anything. The girl didn't notice at all that he was angry, after which she burst into tears and began to ask for forgiveness for taking advantage of his kindness without thinking about his feelings. She probably now disgusts him. The young man looked at her and thought about how Lenali could be unpleasant to him. Maybe it's not so bad that she sheds tears because of him. Then he asked for forgiveness and said that he was too irritable, but still Loris is very sweet even when she cries. Our heroine exclaimed that he had really decided to mock her again, but the guy replied that he didn't do anything like that. Our heroine was wrong. He never joked when it came to her, and he didn't intend to do that in the future either. The girl was confused and did not understand what he meant. Kyle, smelling her hair, thought that let her use him even more, to such an extent that she could not live without him. Let only him be in her head. After some time, Lenali thought that now, next to Crecia, she feels completely different. Is that why her heart is beating like crazy? Suddenly, she ran into Eldick and Arnold, who stated that she seemed to be Liam's twin sister. The girl was surprised and couldn't believe that they were the first to talk to her. Then she bowed and thanked them for looking after her brother. She is his older sister, and her name is Lenali Loris. The young man exclaimed that he was pleased to meet you, and the girl could call him Arnold. Nevertheless, rumors about her reached the young man. It seems that Dylan fell in love with them. But Eldick pulled him sharply by the ear and said that he needed to watch his tongue because she was engaged to Bergman. The guy replied that he understood everything, then winked at her and added that if he didn't have a fiancé, he would have hit on her. The young man introduced himself and said that Arnold was from the knightly faculty. Bahart is studying at the Faculty of Magic, so he doesn't really communicate with Lors, but in any case, he's glad to meet them. Arnold exclaimed that another girl was already waiting for him there, so it was time for them to go. They would definitely see each other again. Our heroine wondered what kind of girl she was, although Osman was still a ladies' man. Suddenly, Rich ran up to her, who shouted where she suddenly disappeared. Was everything okay with her? Since when did they become so close to Crecia? Then she asked that the young man didn't know that she was pretending to be Liam. Lenali asked why he even thought about it. How would Kyle know about it? Bergman asked in surprise why she suddenly calls Crecia by name. Does she think that she lacks awareness? Loris does not observe any caution at all, given that she has a fiancé. Our heroine didn't understand why he was so angry. She just called Kyle by name. Therefore, she shouted that if he was so dissatisfied with the fact that she addressed a person by name, then perhaps now she could call him Bergman. The young man exclaimed that no, and asked why she always goes to extremes. Lenali continued to yell that how could he even talk to her about awareness? Someone who was constantly on expeditions and never even came to her, so the girl didn't want to hear anything about it. Then she said that she had enough and was about to leave. But the young man stopped her and said that if she went home, he would go with her. Our heroine pulled her hand out of his hands and exclaimed that there was no need. She would go alone. On the way, Loris was angry that he always had only her to blame for everything. That's why he was constantly angry with her. What was going on in his head? Getting into the carriage, our heroine noticed that the coachman was not the one who brought them here. Maybe they took turns working. Meanwhile, Eldick was outside and saw the girl going home. After some time, the carriage stopped abruptly and the girl fell head first. She hit her head a little and wondered why they stopped, if something had happened outside. The coachman asked for forgiveness and shouted to the girl to wait a little, as the wheel was stuck in the quagmire. Lenali was thinking that the day was simply worse than ever. All these situations had exhausted her to the extreme. Suddenly the doors opened and the crown prince appeared, who asked for forgiveness for the intrusion because the coachman asked him to help. But he didn't have time to finish the sentence because he saw Lenali Loris in front of him and was very surprised. Our heroine was no less shocked than he was and wondered how he even ended up here. After some time, the guy said that repairs would take time, so if she didn't mind, she could go with him. This is how our heroine ended up in his carriage, but she was more surprised by something else. Did the crown prince really stop his carriage to help a stranger? The young man thought that he still could not believe that, of all the possible people, it was Lenely Lores who was in this carriage. But there is no need to react so emotionally just because he knows her. This is just an accident and the will of fate. But still, the young people were simply incredibly awkward. Dylan kept replaying Kyle's words in his head, that he wanted to tell the girl's secret. He was very interested in what it was. Therefore, His Highness carefully asked what he and Chrysia were talking about then. Our heroine replied that she thought to herself about nothing that could concern the Crown Prince, that she couldn't say that she was shutting his mouth so that he wouldn't spill her secret. Dylan stated that he is not her fiancé, and it's difficult to call him a friend, so someone who doesn't like her mutually has no right to ask about it. The girl noticed that he was so depressed. Could this really be the same prince who executed her family? Lanely thought to herself that it would probably be better to say it directly, so she turned to him and exclaimed that she didn't want to seem rude, but she just had to voice it. Stop sitting there with such a gloomy face. Until now, he must have gotten everything he wanted and took it for granted, but not everything in life is so easily accessible, especially people's feelings. They are not so easy to get. The young man replied that he knew this better than anyone, but he thought to himself that he did not always get what he wanted. It had been like that since childhood. Dylan recalled how his mother watched his father through the window and thought that he was going to that girl again and he didn't care about her for a long time. The kid approached his mother and said that she had him who would never leave her. The woman turned and hissed that it would be better if she had never given birth to him at all. Therefore, the Crown Prince said that there are few things that can only be obtained through violence. He is used to being left without everything. Our heroine wanted to tell him something, but the guy put his finger to his lips and told her to sit quietly while he looked out the window. Suddenly, they heard a loud scream, and the carriage stopped abruptly, so Lenely almost fell again, but Dylan caught her. When the girl asked what happened, the young man replied that they were attacked and surrounded. The young man ordered her to remain in the carriage and under no circumstances go outside. Then His Highness took off the pendant and put it on the girl. Then he added that she should not dare take it off. Let her keep it with her all this time. At the same moment, His Highness ran outside to the intruders. There, the guy saw many killers and noted that, apparently, the convoy had gone ahead. One of the mercenaries said that the prince himself really came out for a personal meeting. If he had remained in the crew, he could have gone to the next world without fear. Dylan thought to himself that, as he understood, their target is the Crown Prince, that is, he, and right now, Lenely is in the crew, so the young man must not allow anything to happen to her. The young man will not allow anyone to even dare to touch her with a finger. Therefore, the young woman immediately entered into close combat with the attackers. When the guy killed part of them, one of them noted that he was strong, but no one should retreat because this was to be expected. In any case, they have a numerical advantage. Therefore, it is still necessary to kill His Highness and the girl who is in the carriage. Hearing that they needed more than just him, the Crown Prince grabbed the man by the throat and shouted who their customer was. Another mercenary exclaimed that the guy was going to die, so there was no point in explaining anything to him. Dylan really hoped that Lenely would be able to escape, because it couldn't be impossible, could it? Meanwhile, Loris was looking at the decoration and wondering if it was a magic stone that neutralizes any attack with the help of defense magic. Why did he give it to her? Shouldn't it be the young man who had it with him? Then the girl looked out the window and saw that His Highness was surrounded. Still, the fact that Dylan, who is the Crown Prince, is much more important for the country than she, the daughter of the Marquis, is clear even to a fool. Why does the young man fight, risking his own life? Why does he protect her? Suddenly, there was a cry from the street that one should not forget about the carriage. The girl should be there. His Highness immediately stood in front of the door and thought to himself that he would definitely not allow her to be wounded, even if they killed him. Meanwhile, our heroine noticed that there were several swords behind the sofa. Lenely didn't understand what to do. If she goes to help, she might reveal that she is Liam. But if she doesn't, then everything might end badly. Dylan thought that he could not do anything. If this continued, then she would be in danger. It was necessary to protect her at all costs. Suddenly, Loris appeared from the carriage and repelled the attack of a mercenary who wanted to attack the Crown Prince from above. Then she added that His Highness had an open back. Our heroine thought to herself that she must have gone crazy to protect the prince, who is her enemy. When the guy asked why she came out at all, the girl replied that she was the eldest daughter of the Lores family, an honorable family of knights. It would be a shame for the dynasty if she was only protected. She thought to herself that this man was fighting so desperately right in front of her eyes. So how could she leave him? The Crown Prince said that she should not take risks with herself. If she feels that she cannot cope, then she should leave him and run. While fighting off the attack, Lena Lee shouted that His Highness should not underestimate her strength. Then she deftly returned from other intruders, but one of them managed to pierce her dress with a knife. Dylan immediately came to her aid, threw the enemy aside, and asked if she was okay. Our heroine silently began to cut the dress she was wearing. To the surprised question of the young man what she was doing, Lors replied that it was all very disturbing in battle. At the moment, the most important thing is to deal with the situation, then everything else. The young man noted that she was quite strong. The girl said that it was an honor for her to hear his praise. He noted to himself that her strength was not suitable for comparison, even with the students of the Academy of the Knightly Faculty. Her swordsmanship and movements are similar to Liam's, perhaps because they are twins. But in any case, they need to escape from this place as soon as possible. The mercenaries noted that the girl is also capable of something, but even so, she is just a girl. She cannot cope with a man if he is not alone. But they were deeply mistaken, since our heroine successfully coped with their blows. Suddenly, the girl felt the chain break and the necklace began to fall to the ground. Lena Lee fell to the ground in order to pick it up, but the attacker did not wait and attacked her again. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince managed to jump on his horse and loudly shouted the name of our heroine. When she ran up to him, His Highness picked her up with one hand and sat her down next to him, after which the young people began to run away. The mercenaries threw daggers after them, one of which wounded Loris's leg. After some time, the guy noted that they managed to break away so they would hide for a while because sooner or later the security should come to the rescue. Then he handed her his cloak and said that she couldn't stay like that, let her put it on top. Lena Lee thanked him, but the young man asked why she took such a risk. The girl asked if he thought he could have dealt with that number of opponents alone. The young man shouted that Loris could have died. Our heroine shouted that she could tell him the same thing. Let him please think about his position, because he is the Crown Prince of this country. His Highness exclaimed that who needs such a ruler? Who can he protect if he is not even able to protect his beloved girl? Our heroine asked why he liked someone he had only met a few times. The young man replied that he couldn't really understand it himself, but nevertheless, he liked it. And that's it. He constantly thinks about her, hopes to meet her. What else could this be, if not sympathy? What else could it be, if not falling in love? Lena Lee exclaimed that she was not the one to ask about this. He was the Crown Prince after all. Therefore, he should not talk so frivolously about his feelings to someone who is not his fiancé. The guy objected that she was really suggesting that he keep these feelings to himself for the rest of his life. The girl exclaimed that this was not what she was talking about, but she thought to herself that she was losing her composure when talking to him. The young man continued to shout that he would not be able to convey his feelings if he did not express them in words. Loris replied that that's it. Let him stop saying that he likes her just like that. Then the young people both froze and simply looked into each other's eyes. Having calmed down a little, Dylan said that they had generally found something to do at such a time. The girl replied that, indeed, the case was not suitable. The young man noted that for the first time he sees her laugh, which is simply lovely, but she has a fiancé, and he understands that he must give up the thought of her. But even so, he never ceases to like her. Suddenly Liam appeared before his eyes, and the Crown Prince did not understand why he remembered him now. Suddenly the girl began to lose all knowledge, and His Highness managed to catch her so that she would not hit herself. Our heroine muttered that for some reason it became difficult for her to breathe, plus her leg hurt a lot. The Crown Prince immediately pulled the cloak off her leg and saw that it was a slow-acting poison. Those attackers put it on the weapon. If it is not dealt with as soon as possible, then her life will be in danger. The young man has poor immunity to such substances, but has no choice but to try. Then he said that maybe it would be unpleasant, but let him endure it, even if it was very painful, and began to suck the poison out of his leg. Our heroine at first told him that there was no need, but then she felt how she felt bad again. Sometime later in the Imperial Castle, Kyle was treating Lena Lee with magic. Krisha thought about why this happened to her, but he would save the girl at any cost. When the young man came to the rest of the fascius, Arnold immediately exclaimed how her condition was. The young man replied that he was fine. He did everything he could. The guy breathed a sigh of relief and said that Kyle calmed him down. When they told him that Dylan and Miss Lors had been attacked, he simply couldn't find a place for himself. The young man added that there is one thing. He believes that the poison that is affecting her now belongs to forbidden magic. Although after several procedures, the poison and the effect of forbidden magic itself should disappear, the scar may remain. If she remains calm, she will soon wake up and her strength will return. His Highness said that he was glad to hear this, but in the meantime he would go and see her. Chrysia hissed that he had just said how Dylan could be happy, even though they would be left with a scar. After which he began to influence the Crown Prince with the help of magic. When Arnold exclaimed what he was doing, the guy replied that they really believed that His Highness had the right to see her. It all happened to her only through his fault. The fact that she was made to suffer and that she was injured was all because Dylan got her involved in it. Osmond told him to calm down. The Crown Prince was also attacked. You can't blame him for everything. His Highness muttered that he really thought it was all because of him. Chrysia asked what it was all about. Why doesn't he do something about his stupid, emotionally uncontrollable nature? Taking this opportunity, I will speak frankly. The prince always acted rashly, thereby creating problems. It is better to pay attention to this. Especially in relation to her, it was because of Dylan that strange rumors appeared. If the young man is not able to protect her, then let him not approach her again. His Highness asked why he should listen to this from him, and who Lenali Loras even was to him. The young man replied that he should not be misunderstood. He was saying this because of Liam. Because hurting Lenali is the same as hurting him, let him remember that. The Crown Prince did not understand what this all meant, why the young man's name had even surfaced now. When our heroine came to her senses, she immediately asked where she was. Vergman immediately hugged her to himself and exclaimed that he was very glad that everything worked out. Dad asked how she was feeling. Mom added that they were told that she fainted because of the poison. Lenali replied that she was fine, but immediately exclaimed, "What about His Highness? How is he anyway?" Unexpectedly, the cat replied that Dylan was fine, so let him calm down. Our heroine was taken aback by the fact that the animal was talking and could not even squeeze out a word. She replied that it was Liam. Don't let her sister worry. Loras exclaimed what happened to him and why he became so cute. The guy replied that the Crown Prince would have revealed that Liam was him, so he allowed entry into magic. When the parents left, Rich said that he should have seen her off properly, and that he should forgive her for having to face danger. The girl replied that it was not his fault. The guy said that he would accompany her, but she lost her temper and replied that she would go alone. Then the guys started arguing with each other about who was more to blame. Liam shouted that it was no one's fault, so this squabble was pointless. Besides, there was a more important conversation. The guy said that he doesn't know if she would like this conversation immediately after waking up, but he wants to find out about what happened. All the criminals fled, and there was not a single victim left at the crime scene. They could not find any evidence that could lead them to the customer. Our heroine was very surprised that there was no trace left. Is this possible? The young man replied that most likely they removed everything that could become evidence, and not without the help of magic. Apparently, the enemy mastered it. But the young man will definitely find him because he cannot forgive the one who dared to hurt her. Now he is returning to the Order and will join the investigation, since she suffered from a poison curse, then let him rest. When Rich left, Liam said that it was a poison curse, just like Vergman said, and forbidden magic was used on him. Lenali exclaimed, "What does this all mean? How is this even possible?" The younger brother replied that yes, he was talking about magic, which became illegal due to its danger. All written information about it was destroyed, and the rest was under the control of the imperial family. The young man added that it seems that there are still people who own it, because he controlled the minds of people, took away the accompanying people, and forced them to attack them. The girl noted that it turns out that she was involved in the secret murder of the Crown Prince. The guy replied that no, be that as it may, these are just guesses, but it is possible that their goal was not only the prince, but also the sister. The fact that all traces and evidence of their presence were removed suggests that by getting rid of her and His Highness Dylan, they wanted to present the circumstances as a betrayal of the Lors family. Our heroine was horrified and exclaimed that why would anyone need this? The young man replied that perhaps they were plotting the fall of the Loras family and the weakening of the absolute power of the imperial family. If you think so, then its past makes sense. The theory that there is a behind-the-scenes boss is getting stronger. Lenali thought that the prince definitely fought, and in order to protect her, you wouldn't even think that this is the same person who executed them. Loras hopes that if everything is as his brother says, then he is not the leader behind the scenes. As the younger brother jumped out of bed, our heroine asked where he was going. The young man explained that they had too little information, so he was going to study past incidents, taking as a basis the incidents with the crew associated with His Highness. Our heroine exclaimed that she should wait because she also wanted to go. Hiding around the corner, they heard the conversation of the maids, who said that this was the first time they had seen the prince so calm. Of course, they would like it to always be like this. It was hard when he was raging, even though it was a long time ago, but nothing can be done. The guy was raised by the Empress, who was comparable to the devil. Since they were heading in their direction, the brother suggested hiding in one of the rooms. The girls continued the conversation about how it was possible to hate your mother, knowing what she went through. One of them replied that she even felt sorry for her. Finding themselves in a bedroom, the guys noted that it was dark and there seemed to be no one there. They wondered what kind of room it was. Liam decided to illuminate the room, using his magical abilities. They immediately saw in front of them a huge portrait depicting some pink-haired woman. The twins were shocked by how much she looked like Lena Lee. Suddenly, a voice was heard from the corridor, which said that he heard something there. Our hero noted that things were bad, but when the maids opened the doors, they saw no one and decided that it was their imagination. The girl said that it was strange, because she was sure that she heard voices. Another exclaimed that she would like to enter this room only as a last resort and out of necessity. Lena Lee was at first surprised that they didn't see her, until she noticed that she had also turned into a cat, but her brother noted that he made it in time. The girl looked at the portrait and said that no matter how much you look at it, it becomes creepy every time. Another noted that this is the same Empress who died 10 years ago. She is very beautiful. Another replied that no one denies, but if we talk about character, then to them the woman looked like the devil. Her emotions were comparable to waves, and how many times had she observed her icy attitude towards His Highness Dylan? She was terribly attached to the Emperor when he left for meetings with his mistresses. Her cruelty knew no bounds, and she was terrible to deal with. Perhaps these are all rumors, of course, but they say that the woman brutally killed not only his mistresses but also his children. The maid also heard that due to the fact that Dylan, who is her own child, had the facial features of the Emperor, she attempted to kill him. But in the end, the Empress committed suicide by drinking poison. Such an incident broke the Crown Prince, but this is understandable. Our heroine could not even imagine that His Highness had such a difficult past. The maids continued to say that, if you think about it, then Dylan is obsessed with that young lady, and she looks like an empress, like 2 peas in a pod. As she left, the girl said that it was difficult to imagine that anyone would love the Crown Prince, knowing what cruel blood flows in him, laughter, and that's all. Lena Lee muttered that His Highness really tried to kill his own mother. Liam replied that he didn't know either. It must have been forbidden to talk about it, because for the imperial family, this could only turn out to be a minus. Loris said that the Crown Prince probably paid so much attention to them because they look like the Empress. She can sympathize with him, but what happened in the past cannot be forgiven so easily. But still, it is unpleasant for her to hear the maids laughing at His Highness in such a manner. What a strange feeling it is. The brother said, "Be that as it may, the investigation is still at the top of the to-do list. After that, he will conduct another one, his own, and let his sister quickly return to the bedroom and rest." Finally, when he said that the transformation into a cat would go away over time, our heroine exclaimed that he was really talking about her returning in this form. After some time, our heroine realized that she was lost. This castle was so big and, in general, where she was at the moment. Then she saw some room and decided to enter it, but on the way she bumped into someone's leg. It was the Crown Prince, who looked at her in surprise and asked himself, "Where did the cat come from here?" While she was thinking that now there was no way to mark time but had to run, the young man bent down and began to take her in his arms. Holding her close to him, the young man noted that she was so soft and smelled very pleasant. Why did she come in? Perhaps she was looking for a place to rest, or she simply got lost. Either way, Dylan is jealous of her because she has the freedom to wander wherever she pleases. If he could turn into a cat, he would have no problem coming to see that same person. But she probably doesn't care about his ranting. Then Her Highness hugged our heroine and noted that she was simply incredibly sweet. At the same moment, the magic stopped working and Lena Lee turned into herself. Our heroine did not understand what she should do now, why the magic dissipated at that very moment. What kind of justification could be come up with in such a situation? The young man carefully asked if this was some kind of dream. It must be because he has been thinking about her constantly for so long. Loris exclaimed that it was all a dream. He must have been very tired over the past few days. His Highness muttered that now she still appears in his dreams. Then he took our heroine by the face and said that he was very sorry that he could not protect her then. The guy forced her to go through a terrible experience. The girl didn't understand what it was. Frankness out of despair or what, because he thinks it's a dream. The young man began to say that perhaps there would be a scar if that were the case then. But suddenly he stopped and added that if he said that, he would cause her problems again. The young man had been planning to apologize for a long time. He did very violent things. Dylan has repeatedly put her in a difficult position, imposing his feelings without betraying the fact that she has a fiancé. He is very sorry. The guy only wanted to see her smile, but as he sees, he chose the wrong course of action. It has always been this way. Lenali thought to herself that the way he can coerce and then delicately apologize, she understands that he is a prince and can be dangerous. But she cannot ignore the way Dylan looks at her. Prince. Someone she had only met a few times and didn't understand what he meant when he said he liked her. But now she realized that because Dylan didn't know what it was like to be loved, so he didn't know how to show love. But the Crown Prince's past has nothing to do with our heroine. Therefore, our heroine got up from his lap and said that the dream was coming to an end. But His Highness asked her not to leave and immediately grabbed her hand, after which the young man pulled her onto the bed so that she lay next to him. Then the Crown Prince asked, at least in a dream, not to leave him anywhere. He wants the girl to be nearby. Lenali asked who His Highness even saw in her, because she was sure that he did not like him. Most likely, the Crown Prince was looking for the love that he could never get from his mother in her, who looked like an empress. The young man exclaimed that it was nothing like that. He really liked her. The girl shouted that he shouldn't talk so frivolously about the fact that he likes someone. He should save these words for a dear person, his future partner. I thought to myself that he was an unhappy young man, hungry for love, but she was not a replacement for him and could not reciprocate these feelings. The young man replied that he did not believe that such a person would appear except her. Laura's replied that she would definitely appear, but for this His Highness needed to change. If Liam is right, and the behind-the-scenes leader really exists, then if you leave the prince, then the tragedy will repeat itself. But if you help, then the prince can change. His Highness asked what he should do, how to change if he succeeds, then whether she will be by his side. The girl replied that he already understands how to do this because the guy has already begun to change. The young man apologized to her for what happened before. If he can leave the past behind and be as honest with other people as he is now, then one day he will meet a person who will accept him for who he is. After which our heroine wished him good night and jumped off the balcony. The young man noted that it seems that now he needs to keep her in his head less, and surprisingly, despite the fact that he was rejected, Dylan does not feel bad. Noticing that his older sister was falling down, Liam immediately made wings for her using magic. The young man exclaimed that why did she jump from such a height? It was dangerous. Lenali replied that she saw him and didn't think any further because she knew that he would do something. The guy said that if she did something like that again, then it won't seem like much. Our heroine asked how his investigation went there. The young man replied that not much, but he managed to learn something about forbidden magic. Then she added that it was better to talk about this in her room, so it was worth going there. Lores looked at the balcony and mentally appealed to the prince that if after this he could change, he could be trusted. After some time, the brother reported that regarding the recent incident, for the most part, everything was as he said. The girl muttered that there was someone who used forbidden magic. That's what he said. The guy replied that yes, magic is dangerous and risky. It was banned by the imperial family hundreds of years ago, and the corresponding books are under its control. Based on this information, it is likely that this person could have secretly obtained them from somewhere, or he is so powerful that he has access to these books. Since to use forbidden magic, you must have a decent amount of magic itself, only strong wizards come under suspicion. Our heroine immediately thought about Kyle and Eldik. Their families lead the imperial faction, but they would betray the prince. The young man continued that, recalling the poison incident at the academy, it seems that all incident reports and the like within the academy's walls are under the control of Duke Bahart's family. Lenali was sure that if they asked to see it, they would not be allowed to do so. When everyone had already returned to Fortis, Arnold stretched and said that the summer holidays were over. They flew by in the blink of an eye. He then grabbed Eldic by the neck and said that there was little time left before the battle of sword and magic, so it was time to show your fighting spirit and train. When they left, the prince immediately turned to Kyle and thanked him for not standing on ceremony with him that day. Chrisia replied that it was nothing. He probably also showed excessive emotionality then, so let him forgive. Or he should say that he felt awkward because he was so frank. His Highness replied that he himself thought that he needed to change. The young man asked why suddenly. Did something good happen? He dared to assume that it was connected with Lena Lee. The Crown Prince replied that no, he had been rejected without hope of a chance. The young man was surprised and asked that he really confessed his feelings to her. When the guy replied that he was in a dream, the young man said that he didn't understand what it meant. He thought to himself that when did this happen? Because he thought that the prince's insistence might have an effect on her, so thick-skinned. But as it happens, even Dylan was rejected. His Highness added that he was definitely rejected, but now he thinks it's even for the better. She suggested the direction in which he should move. The young man noted that he had a completely clear expression on his face, and that he had not seen him like this for a long time, at all, as if Dylan had been around for a long time. But this is also a cause for concern. The prince he knew was tough, determined, they always adored him. After the incident with the Empress, he became much tougher and closed down. If the old Dylan had returned, then Lena Lee would undoubtedly have liked him too. After some time, the young man approached our heroine and, bowing, asked for forgiveness for what happened before. He should have apologized even earlier. He is very sorry that he hurt him so many times and does not expect the guy to forgive him after one apology. But now His Highness will try very hard to change, so if Lors doesn't mind, then wouldn't he want to be friends with him? Lena Lee asked if he made a promise that he would not hurt people anymore. The guy exclaimed that yes, he swears on the name of Dylan von Vasilios. The girl replied that he heard His Highness, but thought to herself that it was too early to completely trust him, but this would become possible depending on his actions. The Crown Prince asked if he would mind calling him simply by his first name. Our heroine smiled and replied that okay, Dylan, then he can just call him Liam. The young man thought that maybe the one he liked all this time was him, but then he began to convince himself that this was some kind of misunderstanding, and this could not be. The Battle of Swords and Magic is an annual 3-day tournament that determines the best among the 4 prestigious academies representing the Vasilios Empire. The so-called desperate battle, in which the competition is merciless, the winners of the competition receive not only honor, the best among the category of knights, instead of in the Imperial Guard, among the category of magicians, a place in the court magic division. They will be able to take advantage of the opportunity after graduation, if they wish. This is what guarantees prospects and is a chance to gain glory for the family. When the time came for the tournament, Agni exclaimed that the day had finally come. It will be very interesting to see what the participants from other academies will be like. When they entered the waiting room at Fortis Academy, they saw the prince and the girl greeted him simply by name. While her friend was surprised that she addressed him so simply, Dylan said that I think his name is Agni. Then he added that if it's not difficult for him, then would the guy help him with stretching? Let him put pressure on his back. Lena Lee exclaimed that her friend did not expect such a turn, so she is a little afraid, because touching the body of the Crown Prince cannot be called an ordinary event. His Highness replied that indeed he was sorry since he said it without thinking. While the young man was surprised that the prince apologized so openly and at the same time Liam spoke so confidently, our heroine said that she would do it for him, after which she approached him and began to help the young man with stretching. Lena Lee leaned over and told him in his ear that his body was a little hard. The guy began to panic that he was too close. He had just recently been rejected by his older sister, so what kind of feeling was that then? Sometime later at the infirmary, Kyle continued to magically cure her leg of the poison. When the guy said he was done, the girl thanked him from the bottom of her heart. Chrisia asked that she really seriously intended to participate in the Battle of Swords and Magic in this state. Lena Lee replied that, of course, her goal was to win for the sake of her dynasty. The guy asked where such self-confidence came from. She still needs continuous treatment. Why not refuse then? If she gets hurt again, he won't treat her anymore. Our heroine noted that even though the young man says so, even now he continues to look after her. Kyle is so capricious. The girl exclaimed that she had absolutely no wounds and that she could do anything to win. Chrisia whispered in her ear that then, if she got hurt and needed his help, he would punish her. After some time, it was announced that the Battle of Swords and Magic would open again this year. This time, a special judge's seat is given to Fortis Academy student, member of the Order of the Imperial Guard, Rich Vergman. Now it's time to immediately invite the participants. Ahead of them all are some of the best students from the prestigious, honorable Fortis Academy. Mighty students of the First Academy for the Youths of St. Ardra. Next follow the students of the Libertas Academy, emitting a certain mysterious aura. Also, finally, those who bring this competition to life are the students of Pandal's Girls Academy. At the sight of the blue-haired girl, Agni exclaimed that this was Mrs. Jessica. Our heroine clarified that this was really some famous person. The young man replied that they say that among the swordswomen, she is the one who is closest to the Order of the Imperial Guard. She, of course, is good at fencing, but it is worth noting the beauty's equanimity. He admires her. Lenali thought to herself that she had noticed this before, but still, her friend is also a fanatic, and this reminds her of her mother. Suddenly, Arnold rushed to her neck and exclaimed that he had not seen her for a long time, but really wanted to. The girl immediately began to push him away from her, and was indignant at what he allowed himself to do at the opening ceremony. How many times she told him to stop. Everyone present looked at this with open mouths and did not understand what was happening. The girl bowed and said that this was their first meeting. She was a second-year student at the Pandal's Academy for Girls, and her name was Jessica Vinegar. The young man explained that she is his childhood friend. Do not underestimate her just because she is female. This lady will give them that painful experience. You can't tell from the outside, but she is extremely strong. Trying to hug her, the guy added that on top of everything, she had always been a beauty, but now she had become even more beautiful. Jessica immediately dodged and said that although, as he put it, she was a childhood friend, but putting his hand on her thigh was too much. There are simply no words for such blatant, ugly behavior. Arnold asked why she was so angry, because once upon a time they had held hands. The girl replied that this was a thing of the past. Besides, now they are each other's enemies, so there is no need to act friendly with her. Lenali noted that although they were childhood friends, their relationship left much to be desired. The prince replied that who would have thought that some ladies would treat a guy who is so good at communicating with them with such coldness. Kyle replied that it's the other way around. He thinks that she really likes the young man. The guys didn't understand how she could like him with such behavior. Apparently, they didn't understand the relationship between guys and girls. Eldick added that Arnold is simply not as thick-skinned as they are. He believes that the guy understands her feelings and, based on this, behaves so frivolously. While the prince and our heroine were thinking about whether they really needed to delve into this, Jessica approached them and said that she was glad to meet Mr. Liam Loras. The girl has heard that he is a strong swordsman who fights as gracefully as a girl can, and they will fight in this round. She has a request to show all her strength during the competition, without any restraint. Lenali noted that she has amazing self-confidence. She is determined to hold out at least until the third round, and this makes her look even better. Therefore, she replied that, of course, he would be happy to fight, showing all his strength. Vinegar noted to herself that it seems that his spirit is unshakable. Perhaps he underestimates her due to the fact that she is a girl, but the lady will not lose in any case. Then the girl said that it was time for her to go get ready for the round and began to walk away. Looking after her, Loris thought that if she appeared before her in the guise of a girl, they could become friends, comrades, mutually holding swords in their hands. Some time later, our heroine thought that since the competition began tomorrow, she needed to have a good rest and went looking for her room, which Rich had talked about. Still, the girl managed to find it, and upon entering, she noted that the room was quite spacious. She was very happy that Vergman was part of the executive committee at the convention, thanks to which they were given a separate room and she should thank him. Suddenly, her leg hurts. Lenali doesn't remember this wound most of the time, but sometimes it throbs, so she needs to apply the ointment that Kyle gave her. Therefore, our heroine took off her pants and began to treat her with medicine. Suddenly, a half-naked young man came out of the shower and Lenali did not expect to see him at all. The girl had the only question in her head, why Rich was in her room, plus naked. Meanwhile, the prince stood near the door to their room and thought that he came to Vergman on one matter. He, as a member of the jury, clearly had a lot to do, so he came on his own. Isn't this worthy of admiration? Meanwhile, the stunned young man asked Lenali what she was doing in his room, but the main question was why in this form. While the girl was trying to figure out what to answer, there was a knock on the door. When the prince's voice was heard asking if Bergman was busy, the guys began to panic. The young man grabbed her hand and began to quickly drag her into the closet. When Dylan entered the bedroom, he noted that there was no one, but the door was open and this was very careless. Meanwhile, in the closet, our heroine asked Bergman why he hid in the first place. The young man apologized and replied that it happened somehow by itself. Lena Lee added that now, besides, she is Liam, was there even a need to hide? The guy thought to himself that now her appearance is indecent, even for the appearance of a brother. Under no circumstances should he allow other men to see her. Our heroine, meanwhile, was thinking about why exactly at such a moment he turned out to be naked. Then she put her hands on the young man's torso and noted that he had simply amazing muscles. Absolutely not what it was before. The young man grabbed her hand and asked if she even understood the situation they were in. Bergman is a guy, and this is her way of stirring up feelings. Does our heroine really think that he will be able to restrain himself? When Rich reached out to kiss her, the crown prince suddenly opened the doors to the closet and found this picture. His Highness muttered that he just heard rustling noises, so he decided to check. But what were they doing there together? Besides, what kind of appearance do they have? Rich immediately asked for forgiveness for the fact that they appeared before him in indecent guises. Coming out of the closet, the young man told Liam to also put on his pants immediately. Our heroine angrily wondered why the young man left her alone with the crown prince. When the girl said that she would go get dressed, Dylan saw the imprint of the poison on her leg. His Highness immediately noted that this was the same scar as Lena Lee Lores, and besides, that rose meant forbidden magic. The young man immediately grabbed her and said that he saw a scar on her leg, so if it was Lena Lee by chance. Our heroine did not understand what to do, since the prince revealed her. Rich entered the room and told Liam to get dressed immediately, as he looked indecent. The girl noted to herself that he appeared very on time, so she exclaimed that Dylan apparently had some business with him, and he would go about his business. His Highness wondered if he had made a mistake, but it couldn't be like that, because the location and shape were absolutely the same. Such coincidences simply don't happen. His thoughts were interrupted by the voice of Bergman, who asked what business he had come for, but the prince completely flew out of his head. After some time, she already complained to Kyle, who stated that she had finally been discovered, and everything was becoming more interesting. He would really like to be there and see the expression on Dylan's face. The girl exclaimed that stop having fun. She was absolutely serious. What should she do? This is the end anyway. Seeing the wound, he definitely exposed that she is Lena Lee. It just couldn't be worse, and probably execution awaits her now. The young man replied that, indeed, if they were talking about the former prince, one could expect anything from him. But now he is sure His Highness would never do such a thing. I thought to myself that, on the contrary, if the guy had found out that Liam was none other than Lena Lee, he would have been more happy. But for the life of me, the young man would not know about it. Our heroine exclaimed, "What to do now? How to beat this?" The young man replied that there was only one way to eat. She needed to prove to Dylan that she was a guy. Then Kyle threw her on the couch and said that he had said that she should be ready for anything. Taking off his shirt, he added that if she comes to the guy's room alone, then no matter what happens to her, there is no need to object. Our heroine lay there and didn't understand why he was undressing at all. The young man noted that she couldn't even resist now, could she? Lena Lee screamed for him to let her go immediately. What was even going on? Crisia replied that there was no way. She didn't want the prince to reveal that Loris was a girl, and he would help her with this. When he tried to take off her shirt, the girl screamed that he couldn't do such a thing. Meanwhile, His Highness sat thinking about the fact that it turns out that all this time, Liam was Lena Lee. Perhaps this is really true, but why did she go so far and take on the guise of a guy, and then enter the academy? If it is so, then what was between them before was still with her. What a horror! It's understandable that after this she doesn't like him, rather the opposite. Now, all her indignations towards him that were before are clear. But despite the fact that he was deceived all this time, he is even glad that Liam turned out to be her. The thoughts were interrupted by the voice of Arnold, who said that he had been feeling strange recently. If something was tormenting him, then let him just say it. His Highness exclaimed what he would do if Liam Lores turned out to be a girl. The guy asked if Dylan hit his head by accident. He would say that it couldn't be that a person who handles the ball so well would be a lady. The young man muttered that really he should just forget about it. I thought to myself that, whatever one may say, that scar was just like hers. What to do now? How best to communicate with her? Sometime later, Jessica was training on her own. Suddenly, she felt her legs suddenly hurt, so she sat down. Then she thought that with this level of pain, she still couldn't stop, because there was no way she could play in order to protect Mr. Arnold. Suddenly, the voice of a young man was heard, who said that that's enough. If you just leave her for a while, she immediately begins to swing the sword. The young man will be her opponent for one battle, and that will be all. The mistress objected that she should become even stronger, but the guy retorted that if she overexerts herself, she will not become stronger. Literally a moment later, the young people began their battle. Osmond turned out to be stronger than her, so he immediately knocked the sword out of her hands. Breathing heavily, the girl replied that this was expected from Arnold. The guy said that she had hurt her right leg, and apparently believed that if she hit it so diligently, no one would know about it. Jessica replied that such a bruise is not a problem and she will be able to participate in the competition. But Arnold said that it hurts. So what is she even talking about, of course? She is annoyed. But it would be better to refuse to participate. Suddenly, the girl burst into tears and exclaimed that no way, she would not refuse. The young man asked why she was so fixated on knighthood. She was from a good family, talented, and after all, such a beauty. After graduating from the academy, Vinegar will be very popular among families looking for a successful marriage. So let her not be so reckless and take things easier. Even if she doesn't become a knight, she will be able to live and find her female happiness. This cannot be a bad option. Jessica thought to herself that she had always liked him, but she was sure that, being from the Count's family, she was not a candidate for the role of his wife, but rather the son of the Duke's family. But she still wants to be close, so the girl decided to become a knight who will protect him. If she shows good results at this Congress, then there is a chance that she will be recognized as the best. Then she turned to Mr. Arnold and asked if he would be by her side, even if she had no value as a knight. The guy replied that what other values are there? Let him not say such terrible things. Vinegar screamed that she simply didn't see any other way to be close to him, after which the girl turned around and began to quickly run away. Eldrick's voice came from the side, asking if she was too stubborn. The guy noted that it means he was eavesdropping. Well, he had a hobby. The young man replied that he just happened to be nearby. More importantly, her feelings, he shares them so he could be a little more affectionate. Arnold replied that danger accompanies the Osmond family, and he just does not want it to touch her. After some time, Jessica wondered if Mr. Arnold really didn't need her. Suddenly, her leg hurt again, and she wanted to rub it, but from the side she heard a voice that asked if it would relieve her of this pain. Vinegar immediately grabbed her sword and exclaimed who he was. The man replied that there was no need to be so careful. Then he began to work on her bruise with magic and asked if what was bothering her was going away. Jessica asked who he was and why he needed all this. The stranger replied that he was thinking of telling her something interesting. Then he began to say that the opponent she would fight with was Liam Lores. His real personality was slightly different. After some time, the third battle of this year's tournament was already approaching. So it's time to welcome the next players. The first of them is Pandela Academy student Jessica Vinegar. Her opponent is a student from Fortis Academy, Liam Lores. All this time, the Crown Prince could not get it out of his head that if he really was a girl, then from the very beginning he liked Lena Lee. Our heroine said that she would give it her all as promised. Paying attention to her evil look, the girl noted that something was clearly wrong with her. As soon as it was announced that sparring could begin, Jessica immediately rushed to the attack. Lena Lee noted that everything is as Arnold said. The lady is incredibly strong. She really moves mesmerizingly, as if she was not fighting but performing a dance. Having delivered another blow, Vinegar hissed that she would not just let her go. Liam is actually a girl, isn't she? Lena Lee didn't understand how she knew. Had rumors already spread? Our heroine, just in case, objected that obviously he is a guy. The girl screamed that only her lie was obvious here. She would never lose to her. She thought to herself that in order to be close to Mr. Osmond, she would fight with all despair, and also would never let go of a man who pretended to be a guy for fun. After which our heroine attacked again and exclaimed that today her mask would be torn off. Jessica, with deft movements, left cuts on Lena Lee, who stated that she knows her true identity, but why is she so angry? Suddenly there was a loud voice that said, "Kill." After this, Vinegar fell to her knees and seemed to be in great pain. Our heroine did not understand what had just happened and who to kill, really her. When Jessica attacked her again, Lena Lee noted that she had become even stronger than she had just been. The girl screamed to run away as quickly as possible, since her body was moving on its own. While Lors was thinking that she was behaving somehow strangely and maybe someone was controlling her, Vinegar knocked the sword out of her hands, after which the opponent raised her hand to deliver the decisive blow. But suddenly the Crown Prince and Arnold appeared, whose swords clashed. His Highness hissed that she was just going to kill Liam. Osmond asked the question, "Is it really possible to raise a sword against a girl?" Dylan exclaimed to the young man to immediately lower his sword. Arnold countered that he could tell him the same thing, but he should be aware of the consequences. His Highness immediately shouted that this round could be considered suspended and would be inconclusive. Hearing this, Jessica screamed that she could not allow this. Victory in this battle was hers, and in general, initially there was no need for this competition. Dylan asked what this meant, but he thought to himself that compared to yesterday, she was behaving extremely strangely. Vinegar screamed that this means that this so-called Liam is not pretending to be who he really is, and he has no right to take part in this tournament. Osmond tried to calm her down, but she screamed that this person was a girl. After which, Vinegar just started to lose consciousness, and the guy immediately picked her up, saying that it looks like she was a little exhausted, and because of this, she was not herself. Let Dylan forgive her. The guy didn't understand why Jessica revealed her identity publicly, so he said that when this girl wakes up, there are many points that she will have to clarify.